All right, welcome back. We are COMP229. That's Web Application Development in the summer 2022 semester at Centennial. And it's week 6 of our broadcast and recording together. A short session that we're going to have. Usually we run overtime. I'll try and keep it within, but it's hard with all the details that we have to go through today. So what did we do last week? Last week we restructured for MVC. We split stuff out, controllers and models. We did all that stuff last week. We added some new NPM modules to support what we're going to do this week, so we don't have to load those in. We created a simple database with MongoDB server, and we were able to read, from our database. That's what we did. Yeah, and that's pretty much what we did. We also displayed the data in a table. In the core shell, it talked about Passport and a bunch of other things that you should have read. Hopefully you did read those things. And that's what we kind of did last week, right? So again, assignment 1, you guys submitted. Most of you submitted assignment 1. There's some people who didn't. Assignment 2 is due this week, this Sunday at midnight. And our midterm practical test is going to be released early on next week, so Monday morning when we get together. There will be no lecture next week, so I'm not going to do any kind of tech demo or any lecture. What I'm going to do on the Monday when we get together is talk about the exam, the midterm test, and give you guys hints on what to do. I'm going to make myself available during our lecture period, so on Monday 8:30 to 10:30 like normal, and on Wednesday of next week, again from 12:30 to 2:30. Those 2 periods are there for Q&A, question and answer, regarding the test. Okay, that's what it's for. So I'm not going to talk about tech in terms of doing a whole lecture and all that stuff. I'm just going to release the test on the Monday, and it'll be due on the Sunday of that week. Okay, so the whole week you have to finish the test. It'll be individual and all that kind of stuff. And you should, it's a culmination of the things that we've talked about. And then as soon as we're done the stuff next week, we're going to get right into our group assignment that's going to happen on week 8 when you guys get back from break. Remember that the midterm test, after the midterm test, there is a break. And usually what we do is we take a break between the weeks, the 26th of June until the 2nd of July. And then we're back together on July 4th. That's when this whole thing is, if I'm not wrong. Because the July 1st long weekend, it starts off, I think July 1st is a holiday for everybody here, but we're off anyway. And then we'll be back July 4th. And then we'll be going from July 4th to July 8th with our week 8. And that's when we're going to do team forming and a bunch of other stuff that's going to happen pretty much, right then. So,
sorry, Professor.
Yep.
I have a question.
Sure.
When is our week reading week? It's gonna be on sixth week or 7th week?
7th. So it'd be the 8th week. So,
Okay.
well, the 8th calendar week. All right. So this is the 6th week here. We're in the 6th week. Next week is the 7th week. That's going to be our test. And then the 8th calendar week is going to be the mid-semester break. All right. That's our reading week. The 9th calendar week, but the 8th lesson week. So week 8 on our lesson is going to be when we get back, right?
Thank you, Professor.
No problem. All right, so I know it's kind of confusing sometimes. We have calendar weeks and we have actual lesson weeks, but at the end of the day, I think it's fairly straightforward and stuff in terms of what we're doing. All right, so this is our schedule. I just wanted to mention this again just to make sure we're on track. This week, what are we doing? Our live session, we're going to try and finish full credit as much as possible, see how much time we have. I'm going to start authentication as much as I can. I've given you online and on Discord a login, register, and app CSS that we're going to replace. We're going to replace our app CSS with this one to set up our authentication pages. So you don't have to type it by hand. It's going to save us some time this morning. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just drag those things into our chat. It says network disconnected. That's weird. That is really weird. Let's try that again. So let's try that. That worked. That worked. I don't know if I can do the app CSS. Let me see, try that again. No, it doesn't like that app CSS at all. So you're going to have to download the app CSS from eCentennial. It's there, and I've also put it on Discord, so take a look. But I've given you the register and login pages. Without getting those pages done, it's going to take us longer to do what we're going to do. All right, let's get into this. So what we're going to do like normal is go to the desktop, go to Centennial. We're going to get into this piece. And you guys are section 2. We're going to start in there. So there's week 5. Like normal, what I'm going to do is delete the node modules folder. Let's delete that. So delete node modules. And I'm doing this because I want to make it so it's quicker and to demonstrate how it works. So we're going to base it off that. And we're just going to copy paste. So Control C, Control V, right? Which is going to make a copy of our files, right? There it is. And I'm just going to rename it to week 6. There we go. I'm going to pull up Visual Studio Code here. Excuse me. Here's VS Code. And I'm just going to drag and drop. I'm going to drag and drop week 6 in there. Looks like Visual Studio Code updated. Now I don't have node modules because I deleted it. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a yarn install. So whenever we don't have node modules, if you delete node modules because you want to make your for things easier to copy, we just have to do a yarn install, and then that puts node modules back if there was no issues. Now it says that, notice this, my engine yarn is incompatible with the module, expected version 1.2218 and got 1.2219. When you have this error or something like that, we can go to package.json and it says this is the yarn module we need. If I change this to a caret, and I showed this in the video, or I talked about this on the second section anyway. If I change these to a caret, it means that anything greater than or equal to, these versions, right? So anything greater than or equal to these versions. So if I save the package.json now, the way it is, and try it again, then it should work no problem. And you can see that that's no issues now. And why did that give me an issue? Because I updated my yarn to 1.2219, but the thing that it said in my package.json was 1.2218, and that's a discrepancy between the two things. All right, there we go. So that's one thing. And once I've added that in, I'm going to do a git add dot. We're going to do some changes here in a second. Git commit -m, and we're going to say added project files for week 6. And then we'll do a git push, just like normal. But that doesn't take care of our issues because we deleted our files. Notice on the source control side, it shows we still have like 4,000 plus files. Why? Because we deleted the node modules from week 5, and we have to go into week 5 to fix that problem. So if I go to up one, and we go to week 5, and then if I do a git add dot, git commit -m, and we'll say removed node modules from week 5 for copy purposes. That's what we did. Again, it's a record of everything that we've been doing on in our project. Let's go back into week 6. Okay, so that's how we did it. And that's good enough for me. So I've kind of started off. We have some other changes to make. This should say week 6. And this should say week 6. So that's what we're doing. Save. That'll be one of our changes that we're going to make now. Where last we left off, let's recompile and everything. So Control-Shift-B. Control-Shift-B is going to make sure we recompile everything so that we're up to date. And I recommend using the transpile task right away when we start off testing, because people get to this thing where they say, it's not working for me. It may not work for you if you don't recompile, right? So that we have to make sure that that's done. And once this is done, let me also change this to 005. since this is our kind of our unofficial 5th minor version or fix or whatever. And now that we've done that, let's run it in the PowerShell. We'll run nodemon. And remember what it's going to do. It's going to be looking for MongoDB locally. And it should fail at this point because I haven't been running MongoDB at all right now. So let's run MongoDB. So again, I'm going to pull up a command prompt to run MongoDB locally, mongod. And if everything goes well, we can see MongoDB is running. And as soon as I do that, you can see that it connected to MongoDB. That's good. I'm going to make another PowerShell here just for anything else we need. And I'm going to run this on localhost so that we know things are okay. So everything is running as normal. And what we're going to do here at the top, we did a movie list, and we should see the movie list come into our view. Okay, that's what we did last week. Okay, so all the same stuff. We didn't change anything from last week, but we have a couple things to do this week. If we can finish full CRUD, we will. That's what we're going to do. But first, what I want to do is protect this page, this movie list page, so that we can get authentication done. So on the course shell, if we look in the course shell, the course shell has a bunch of videos. Again, I encourage you guys to watch the videos because they will help you with the second half of semester. It talks about authentication with Passport, how to do it, 51 minutes. There is more. Another one, like part 2, is 47 minutes. You can see that that would take up most of our time. Authentication navigation, we have to change, add login and register pages there. Connecting Heroku and MongoDB, we have to do that. And there's also authentication with JWT. You can see that there are clearly probably around, I would say, 3 hours and a bit of watch time that I've got in there for you. And I've put this up so that way you have everything you need for your assignment 2, as well as you know, some basics for what we're going to do for the second half of semester. The assignment 2 Dropbox is also here, just to remind you of when everything is due. And then that is, and I've given you, like I said, online, an app.css, a register.ejs, and a login EJS page that we're going to use right now. So to prepare, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this inside of Visual Studio Code. I'm going to take those pages that I was mentioning to you. So I'm going to go back into those pages that I downloaded. Okay. And inside of here, you can see that I have, put them here. No, did not. Huh. Well, I don't know where I put them. I'm going to download the same stuff as you. How about that? And we'll put them in our downloads folder. That's where we'll put them. So just like you, I'm going to go up to here and just download them. So what you can do is you can download your app.css. And let's put that inside of our downloads folder. There we go. And we'll do the same thing with register.ejs. So we'll download that one. There we go. As well as our login EJS page, download. All right, so those are the pages right there, login, register, and app.css. And what we need to do is we need to put those into place, these things, inside of our project. So again, what I want to do, just going to bring this up here. I'm going to go to our desktop, and underneath where we have our stuff this week, which is in here, I'm going to go into and put them into place where they're supposed to go. So login and register pages, if you think of what those things are, that's going to help us do the authentication. That's just pages to help us out. We're going to put them in place inside of our server side under views. This is where they go, and under content. I could have had, excuse me, a separate folder for these, like for example, an auth folder, A-U-T-H, just to separate things out. So like, let's say components, a content, and an auth folder. I could have done that. I'm not going to do that here. I'm just going to put it inside of content. And I'm going to drag these two things, just register and login inside of that. area here. And then what I want to do is for my app.css, I want to replace my app.css in my client. So if I go to up here to week 6, and I'm going to go into client and under content, you can see that there's an app.css already there. I'm just going to replace that with this one. So I'm just going to drag and drop that in. It's going to ask me to replace, and I'm going to replace that file with my file. Okay, so that's what's going to happen. If I go back, you can see that there are 4 changes now. These are the changes that we've made. A login EJS and a register EJS page, as well as a change to the app CSS. So that's what we've done. Let's take a look at that app CSS. So it is different. It just added some stuff, some styling for our login and register pages, right? And we have our login and register pages, like I said, inside of our content, login and register. All right, so now that we've added that in, that's our starter for today. So let's just do a git add doc, git commit -m, and we'll say added files for authentication, right? And git push. So that's going to be up on GitHub now. Okay. And I did that. The reason why I did all that instead of like typing it out for you is because it's going to take, a bit of time to type out. And all they are is a login and register and authentication form. That's what they are, right? So now what I need to do when it comes to authentication, we're going to use a module called Passport. We actually loaded this module last week. And if I look at passport.js.org, this is the module we're using. I'm just going to copy and paste that into the chat for everyone. So you can, if you wanted to explore that, you can. But basically what Passport is a module that helps us authenticate not just with MongoDB. It's not just MongoDB. It's definitely for Node.js, but you can authenticate with anything. If you want to connect with MySQL, you can do that. If you want to connect with Firebase, you can do that. But you're just going to use Passport, as an example to connect. Passport has a different, what we call strategies. So there's the strategies that they have. Strategies are how to authenticate. Typically, authentication happens for us most of the time with username and password. Okay, those are the basic ways of doing this. Username and password, the authentication strategy is called local. That's our local authentication, right? There's also something called OAuth, right? So we authenticate with third parties, for example, with Facebook, Twitter, GitHub, Microsoft, and whatever. All the strategies are listed here. So if you actually go to the page, you can see that there are a bunch of different strategies. If you want to authenticate with Passport and Facebook, that is the strategy that you have. And you'd have to download another module for this, all right? There's also Google and Twitter and pretty much every kind of module you can possibly think of, or any major third-party provider is available. How does this work? How does kind of OAuth work? Well, what we do is we create a three-way trust, kind of an association, where we have, and I kind of covered this up on the course shell, where we have if I was going to draw this out here for a second, let's just go back just one sec to the previous page. We have more room to draw. There we go. So if I was going to draw this out from a third-party trust perspective, right, the way it works is you have, here is your client. Okay, so this is the client. Maybe that's the user. So we'll say user or client. And let's suppose the user or client is trusted, right, by a third party like Google. Okay, so let's make Google, well, let's make Google green. So let's say Google up here. Actually, I'll make it down here. So let's give us more room. So this is Google. And it could be Google or it could be Microsoft. It could be a third party. So a third party like Google, right? And this third party trusts, we have a trust relationship between the user or client and the third party, right? So the way this works is you have this trust relationship between the two things, right? There's the trust. So we know, actually the trust relationship kind of goes both ways. Let's just undo that. And let's just make the arrow go both ways between these two things. So the client trusts Google and the Google trusts the client, right? So we have this trust relationship between the two things. And then I have my site, okay, our local site. We'll make that another color. And this is this site right here, right? So this is our local site. So our local site, right? And the way it works is this. If the third party trusts my client and my client trusts the third party, and let's suppose that I trust the third party and the third party trusts me, I have this other relationship with the third party, then, well, I trust the client. It creates this three-way relationship. So the way it works is I will allow the client to authenticate with Google or another third-party provider, for example, Microsoft, GitHub, LinkedIn, whatever, name it, Instagram. And then they can log into my site. I will keep minimal information about the client because the client has all their authentication information on the third-party site. And if the third party says they're okay, well, then they're okay for me. That's how it works, okay? And this idea is very common. We've seen it almost everywhere. We're going to see it today when we use MongoDB Atlas again, when you log in. This three-way trust is good. The other reason why this is good is because, again, you don't have to, the client doesn't have to use new authentication credentials for your site. They can just use the third party. And that's because it's always difficult to remember passwords on like 20 different sites. And that's kind of the reason, kind of the one of the justifications for using this three-way trust association, which is kind of cool. It's for convenience, but also for security. Because again, think about this. Do we really have a secure site? Even if I was going to really work hard to secure my site, it would be okay in terms of holding information about the client, because I'm going to hold their information, username and password. But who's to say that I'm not going to get hacked compared to a third party? I believe the third party will have better security measures than I probably can put together, right? As an example, even if I try really, really hard, most times, I'm going to put it out there. It's not that they can't get hacked. Everyone can get hacked. But third parties like Google, Microsoft, and GitHub and so on don't get hacked as often, is what I'm going to say, as us, if we're going to make our own, right? If we're going to get hacked. So that's the reason why. That's another reason why. So there's two real reasons. One is convenience. The other one is security. And that's what this another strategy would be. So Passport has many strategies. And the one we're going to use, of course, is this username and password strategy, because that's going to be that's kind of our basic thing we use, the username and password. Username and password is called local strategy, like I said before. Okay, so let's just clear all that up. Local strategy, if you go into view all strategies, you can search for a local strategy. So if I type in, there it is right here. Actually, here it's right here, Passport local. Passport local is basically you install it, the module, and it talks about kind of how you would use it. We need to install or configure Passport local so that it uses a strategy like this. Here's an example of finding a user in the database. We find one, that is the way it goes. Authentication requests, they give you examples of how that looks, and it talks about how to install and test and everything else. So this is kind of what we're going to be doing right now. Full documentation for all this stuff is found here, right? So if I go to documentation, they have tutorials on username and password. That's the most common one. You can also sign in with Google, and then if you follow some of these, kind of tutorials, there's lots of stuff online as well. Then you can sign in with Google or Microsoft or whatever. For your assignment, you don't have to sign in with a third party. You can just use username and password. That's why I'm showing it to you here. Okay. However, for your for the second half of semester, your group may elect to include sign in with a Google or Microsoft or something else. Okay, it's up to you. All right, let's go back to this. So again, we've talked about authentication a bit. Let's make it work now. So how do I do it? So here's our app CSS. I'm going to go into our, for now, let's get into our server. And I'm going to go into the app configuration for the server itself. Okay, this is where we're going to start today. And I want to talk about this in a bit because there's many, I would say, directions on how to put this together. One of them is we need, right now we have an index router and we have a movie list router. That's the two routers we have. But we need another model that we don't have. We need a user model, and we don't have the user model right now, okay? The user model, what it'll do is just like the movie model. This is the movie model, which is a schema, right? We need a model to allow us to log in and register. And one thing we'll need is a username and password kind of thing. And you'll see that it's not quite that. So certainly we can do that, but we need a model first. So if I was going to go and can do configuration, well, we need the model here and we don't have it. That's number one. Our router is also going to be something that we're going to have to change, movie list router, as well. And we're going to have to do some configuration changes here to the engine itself. Okay, so that's something we're going to have to do. Let's start with the model today. So again, going back to model, right? Here's our model folder. I'm going to add in the user model. So let's go to user.ts. There's our new user model. And under the user model, right, what we want to have here is some similar things to what we did with the movie model, right? So there's no point reinventing the wheel. Let's grab the movie model, copy everything, and paste it into the user model for now. Okay, there it is. And what I want to do is modify the user model so that it becomes, the movie model that we have here, so that becomes the user model. So first, let's rename the schema. So right click and we'll, what we want to do is we want to rename symbol to rename. We can call this the user schema. So that's the first thing. The model isn't going to be called movies, but rather user. Okay, that's the user model. Okay. And obviously the thing that needs to change is this stuff, the guts of the user model. And I want to add a few different things here. So there's going to be obviously a username and password, but I also want the display name and an email address as well. So display name is how we're going to display the name on the site. So let's change some of these things from scratch. Let's go here and just kind of change this up. So display name is 1. I'm going to make it capitals. However, username should be lowercase. I'm just going to warn you, username should be lowercase. We'll make that a string. And we'll also do email address as capitals. And you're going to say, why, Tom, why? And I'll explain this in a second. This is kind of the typical way we can add properties. We can also add properties the long way. So this is kind of like the simple way of adding properties with the data type. We can add properties also the longer way. So for example, if I wanted to know when the username was, or the kind of the user object, the user model was created, then I can put a created, and instead of doing shorthand, I can use an object for with a detailed way of creating the data type, where I can say that the type is a date, and I can also say that the default value for the date is date.now. Okay, so that's one thing I can do. And that's another way, this kind of method here is another way of creating a data type, but instead of me just making it this way, I can also give it a default value. So you can be more detailed there. That's another way of doing it. And by the way, if you actually look at the documentation for Passport, as an example, and for Mongoose, you'll see that there are a lot of different things you can do here in the schema. Next, if I go to updated, that's another one I can do, and I can kind of do the same thing where I have the type as a date. So when I update the model, let's say I want to change the password or something like that, we can have an updated thing. So it's a date type, and my default value again would be date.now. So at the beginning, when we first created and updated are going to have default values. The collection won't be the movies collection. It'll be the users collection. We don't have this collection yet, but it's going to be made for us. Okay. And that's really everything for the model. And we're following the steps. We're importing Mongoose. As an example, we're making an alias. We're creating a schema that matches the data, which is our user schema. Notice that there is no password here. So why? Because we're not going to save our password as clear text. Anything that we save here, remember what we did last time. Let me just pull up the Mongosh here to show you. If I go to Mongosh, here it is. And if I do something like show or sorry, yeah, show DBS. You can see that I have the media DBS. If I use media, and if I say show collections, this is on the MongoDB side, you can see I have the movies collection here. Here's a movies collection. And I can do a db.movies.find. You can see here I've got clear text. This is all something that I can read. I can read the database. I don't want to read the database from my password. My password should be hashed. We should never store a clear text password ever inside of our database. So therefore, notice it's not part of the model, but we're still going to store it somehow. That's interesting. How to do that. So it's not part of the model, but we're going to store it. So that is the first part. So we've added our user model. Let's put that up on GitHub. And I'm just going to add another little node thing for that, another PowerShell. So again, git add dot, git commit -m, and we'll say added user model. That's the first thing we've added in. Oop. And then git push. Today I can't type. There we go. And now our model is up on GitHub. Yay. Awesome, right? So we need routing. So in order for us to get there, and notice our routes, we have our movie list route and our index route. So the question is, should our login and register be in the top level routes? And the answer for me is, yeah, they should. Now you could make them separate. And if we were going to make separate routing for our authentication routes, which is totally possible, we can totally do this. I'm not adverse to it, right? So our auth routes, as an example, then we would follow the same precepts that we've got here for our router. So let's do that. Let's make a brand new file. So but I'm going to copy and paste this stuff. So in our routes, I'm going to make a new file. We're going to call this auth for authentication, right? The auth routes, authentication routes. And you know what? Since we're going to make the auth routes, I might as well make the auth controller. So let's put that in there as well. So here's our auth.ts controller. Our controller and our routes right now are empty, but we want to take the best of what we can from my index.ts file and put them inside of our routes. Okay, cool. So I want to grab all of this for now. And I'm going to go into our auth and paste that in. We don't need all of this, obviously, because we're not going to go to display about, well, I mean, why would I duplicate all this? That doesn't make any sense. But for now, this is where we start. And for our authentication routes, right, we got to think about what we need. We do need in our authentication routing, all right, we do need information about our user. Okay, that's something we're going to need, all right, from now on. So our authentication routes, yeah, totally, it's important that we use our user. So we're going to put that inside of here as well. But again, if you think about this, do we need the user information here in our router, or do we need the information in our controller, right? So these are the things that we have to think about in terms of, I'm just looking at my notes here, in terms of all the stuff that we want to do. So again, when I think about the types of routes that I need, first of all, I need to access my controller, and my controller should be my auth controller. So this is going to change. This is going to be auth here. Notice it's going to give me an error right now because we don't have any of these things in my controller, right? Any of these functions, right? And let's just do let's give us some help for my auth controller. I'm going to go into my index.ts. And I'm just going to grab everything from my index.ts here and just drag it into my auth controller. So again, Control A, copy, go into my auth controller and paste and save. And what you're going to see is now my auth routes, well, they compute because they're the exact same thing as my index right now. Same thing, right? However, my auth routes, I mean, I don't want to display my home page. I want to display my login page. So let's do that. So we'll say display, actually undo. Let's change the refactor rename. So I'm going to go to right click and go to rename symbol and just change this to display login page. That's the first thing. And when I do this, when I change my thing to display login page here in my auth.ts routes, then if I go back, or controller, if I go back to my routes, you can see that does it exist here? Yes, it does. Here's my display login page, okay? So that's kind of changed. And if I go back to my, and again, this is wrong. Obviously, I'm not going to do this right now. I'm going to talk about how to change this. But I'm just formulating this up. So display login page. I'm also going to have a display register page. So let's do that one. So again, I'm going to rename symbol. Again, we're in my auth.ts controllers. I'm going to call this display register page. So there's my change. So I can display the pages. And I'm also going to process the pages. This is new. So processing pages and displaying pages are two different things. So here I'm going to call this process. So again, refactor, so rename symbol. I'm going to call this process login page. So I'm going to have that. And I'm also going to rename symbol to process register page. And I have that. And then I'm also going to have a process logout page. So I'm going to right click here on the last one and change the name just for the method. It's going to be called process logout page. Okay, process logout page. This stuff is incorrect. So let's just get rid of it. So we don't need this. These are just stubs now, right? Which is kind of what we have. And we kind of started backwards. We started from the controller first, because once we have the names of our functions, we can reference them in our router. Okay, so display login page, display register page, display process. So these are displays. So display functions, we'll call them. And these are processing functions. Processing functions. So where I want to process the login page. When someone press submit on the login page, I want to process it. So that's what those two kind of functions. I'm just dividing it here, right, for you. In order for us to do any kind of processing or anything like that, most likely what I'm going to need in my controller itself is I'm going to have to include the user model. So let's do the user model here. So I'm going to say import, and I'll say we need to include the user model for authentication functions. That's what we're going to do up here. And so this is going to be an import. We're going to import a couple of things. If I import user, right, from models user, that's kind of the first thing we want to do. We also need passport functions as well. So we need passport functionality. And that's like the passport module, right? So we have to import passport from passport. So that we need as well. So those two things. And that's we're going to need those two things to do stuff for our display, our process. For sure, this stuff here, we're going to need all those things for. Okay. Wonderful. This is good. And what does our routes look like right now? So this, again, this is just our stub. So stubs, when we look at stubs, they're just, and it's spelled, some people ask what stubs are. Stubs are just, again, empty functions that we're getting ready to do all the stuff inside of them, but there's nothing inside of them right now. They're just function signatures with no code inside, okay? And the same thing goes with our routes. So routes right now are all wrong. This is wrong because it's going to different pages. Let's fix this so that it works with what we want them to do, right? So again, we want to go to our register, our login page, all that kind of stuff, right? So the names here, the URL has to change for a lot of this stuff too. So let's do the first one, which is login. When we go to the login route, we want to display the login page. Yay. When I go to the register route, right? Here's my register route, right? I want to display the register page, but that's already here. We have two of them because I had slash and slash home. So I can get rid of one. And this would be the display the login page. This is display the register page. We're going to fix this in a second. So this is register, right? So when the user types register in the URL, they're going to go to this function. Okay, that's what that works. Those are the display methods. and those are GET requests. And then there's going to be 3 methods that are processing, right? Process login, process register, process logout. The reason why these change is because I refactored renamed inside of my controller. When I renamed the controller function, Visual Studio Code was smart enough to rename the function names that were imported into the routes here as well. Okay, that's what happened. So definitely projects is going to change to register or login, but we already have a GET request. We have a GET request for login. We need to change this to a POST request. A POST request means when I submit my form in my login page, it's going to call the process login page. And we need to make sure that that form has a POST type method on it. And I'll talk about this in a second. So instead of display projects page, we're going to say process the login page. That's what we're going to do there. And obviously this will be the same. So this will be the register page, right? And it'll be a POST type request instead of a GET, right? So that's the change. And this will be process the register page, or process the register page. There we go. And finally, although we're going to process the logout page, it's funny enough, process logout page, it's still going to be a GET request because there's no form for the logout page. We're not going to have a special logout page that's going to say, are you sure you want to log out? It's just going to be a link that allows us to log out. Okay. So again, this would be the logout page, process logout page. Okay, so that is our the way it's going to work right now. And really, when we think about this, my friends, this is the auth route. It's really that simple. There's nothing else to put in here. That's why separating our routers from our controllers is so good, right? And the reason for this is because it's very simple. It just talks about the method that we're going to use to, the routing method we're going to use, post or get, the URL, right, and the related function. That's what it is. Okay, so really straightforward. So I'm going to put this up on GitHub the way it is right now. So I'm going to say git git commit -m, and we're going to say something like added authentication stubs. Git push. Okay, that's kind of a very broad thing, but you notice we added the authentication for controllers and routes. All right, nice. And what I want to do is I want to modify our configuration just ahead of time. So go into my app.configuration here. And just like we did with our router here, we want to add our auth routes here. So I'm going to say import, right? And we'll say the auth router from /routes/auth. And this is kind of our auth authentication routes. That's what that is, right? We're just configuring now so we can include our auth router, this part right here, inside this part right here, inside of here, okay? And just like before, once we include the auth router, even though we've included it, we haven't used it yet, we have to use the authentication routing down here. When I go and look at the routes, I'm just going to copy paste this one, just like before. And we're going to say that this is the auth router. So auth router, there it is. So now our routing has been added to our app.ts inside of our configuration. Okay. Again, we're still far away from getting everything done. And let me recount all the things we've changed. So first, we've made a user model. That's the first thing we did. Then we split off and created new routes for authentication, as well as a controller for authentication. We just copy pasted everything and renamed all the files, all the functions. All right, that's what we did. We also imported the user model as well as Passport, because Passport's our new friend for doing all our functionality. That's the new module that we added in. So that's what we did so far. We're just preparing still at this point, but things are kind of hooked up to some degree. What I want to do at the beginning is the ability for us to see the pages without any kind of processing at all. I want to be able to display the login and register pages because that's the easiest thing we can do, okay? it's easy for us to display pages because we already have the pages here in our views. We copied those in. I gave them to you. We copied them in, and we have them in our register and login right here. Okay. So very straightforward. So let's do that then. So in our auth controller, right, which is here where our display login page is, what I want to do here is I want to kind of think about what I want to do. So do I really want to always display? It's typically what I want to do is I want to say something like a res.render. Remember the res render? And the res render is, I'm still going to use my index template here. And I'm going to have a object like we normally have. I want the title, in this case, to be login. There's our login title. And I want my page also to be login lowercase. That's like normal, right? But I want to have some additional information from now on. I want to have a messages object that can send messages to my page. And I'm going to use our request.flash. We never set this up yet, but we need to configure this. I'm going to use request flash. That's what I'm going to do. Flash, remember we used connect flash last week. If you look at our PowerPoint, remember last week what we did? We added a bunch of modules, and one of them was Connect Flash. Connect Flash, like I mentioned last week, is a module that we can use. So that way, if I refresh my page, because if I was to click submit on any form, my page would be refreshed, and I would lose the message. But instead of losing it, Connect Flash keeps that message in memory or on the server. And then what it allows me to do is send the message to my page if necessary. I need to give Connect Flash a key, which I'm looking up, which is going to be the login message. If I have a message, it's going to send the login message to my page. That's what it's going to do. Okay, so that's the one change that I've made so far in my display login page. Okay, and that's messages. The other one I want to add in is I want to keep track of my display name. So my display name is something else that I want to use. For now, I'm just going to call display name. I'm going to put the object display name here, and I'm going to make it so that the display name object is empty. Okay, that is my res render for my page, right? Pretty simple. So I want to display the login page, and I want to send a flash message. I haven't connected this up yet, but I will. And that's really it. Okay, I want to do the same thing for my register page. So my register page is almost going to be identical, right? So copy paste. This will be called register. And it'll go to the register page. And instead of my login message, that's the key value pair that we're going to use. We're going to save in Flash. We're going to call this the register message for now. So we're setting this up. And those are the two kind of routes I want to set up right now, just the login page and the register page route. But we need to set up Flash, request Flash, because request Flash won't work. It'll error out if I try and do this, because I haven't really set this up in my configuration at all. So back to the drawing board. Let's save this. And back to the drawing board. And I mean that we're going to add stuff to the configuration now. We need to add in all of the configuration that I want, right, for my site and for my login. And we can do that right here. Might as well, since we're starting to configure everything, configure the rest of the authentication pieces in place. So one, we've imported our package for Mongoose. We did that already. And just before we do our routing, so this is our routing, I'm going to do all the authentication in here. Okay, this is where the authentication is going to be. So here, make some room between where it says step 1. And let's just get rid of step 1 because that was for connecting to the database last week. We don't need step 2 or step 3. Just renaming those things so that way you know that they've changed. So when it comes to authentication, step 1 for authentication, so here's step 1, right, is for authentication. I'll say for authentication. Well, that is import modules. That's what we have to do again. So I'm going to say import. Here's the first thing. Import. We're going to use session. Did I include session last time? I don't think I included session. Ha ha ha. We forgot to do express session. Let's put that in, please. Sorry about this. totally forgot to do this. So we're going to do express session is going to be a new module we're going to add in. So we're going to say yarn add, right, and express dash session, right? Express session is something we need for our authentication right now. And again, if you looked at our package.json, here it is. It just added in express session right here. For us to get good code hinting, we're going to have to add our, in our dev dependencies, our at types in here as well. So let's do that. That's something I got to note for next time. So yarn add at types / express dash session and then dash dev, and the dev dependencies, right? Once we've done that, it adds it into our area down here. There's our express session. Notice that our express session is 1.173 and our hat types express session is 1.174. So actually it's ahead. This is not normal. It's usually the other way around, but that's okay. And yay, we got that in. We've got express session. Let's go back to that configuration file where we're doing. So that's the first thing we want to add in, express session. So we're going to say import, we'll call it session from express session. So this is the one thing we want to add in. And we would get an error if we didn't just do the things I just did. Okay. So we added express session. We also want to import passport. Okay, we want to add passport in there. We also want to add in passport local from this. Remember, passport local is our local authentication. Really? You got it 1.0? That's interesting. Passport dash local, right? So we want that in there as well. And we're also going to import Flash. Remember that Flash stuff? Here's Flash from Connect Flash. There's our Connect Flash. There it is. So those are the 4 modules that we're adding in right now. Okay. For JWT, and this is for the second half of semester, down in here, you would also add JWT authentication. We're not going to do that right now. And we're not going to fool around with the JWT configuration. We're just going to do passport authentication for now. So we're going to skip that. It's up online for you for the next piece we're going to do in the second half of semester. We need JWT. JWT is JSON Web Tokens. We need those when we have a separate front end from a back end. Right now, our front end and back end are one. We're using Express. And we're using Express, the Express view engine for our front end, right? We don't have a separate front end. A separate front end would be something like Angular or React or Vue or Svelte or some other front end framework. We don't have that. So we don't need JWT right now or CORS. However, what we're going to do is CORS is really great also. So we're just going to say modules for JWT, right? Support, and one of those modules is CORS. We're just going to include it here because we already have it. And CORS is cross-origin resource sharing. We're going to put it in there. We don't need it, but we're going to put it in there. And then what we want to do is we want to define our authentication objects. Okay, so here's step 2. We're going to, for auth, we'll say for auth, we're going to define our authentication objects. Okay, and what those look like are, we're going to let local strategy. We're going to make that equal to our passport dash, and what I want to do, passport local dot strategy. So basically passport local, local strategy is just an alias. Okay, that's what we have there. We're also going to, so this would be kind of like step 3 for auth. We're going to import the user model. We need that here too, right? So we have the user model. So we're going to say import user from ... /models/user. We need that too. Okay, so Again, this is all part of the configuration in our app.ts, okay? And then as soon as we have that, we're going to import the router and all that stuff. We did that already. So we did this piece. And we make our app like normal. We did our DB configuration. We don't really need to change any of this right now because we've already done this piece, right? We've configured our view engine, which is happening right here. As an example, here we're doing express, JSON, URL encoded, cookie parser, our static routing, and all that kind of stuff. And just underneath this and before our routes, we're going to configure cores. So we're going to say app.use cores. And remember what this is. This is adds cores, which is cross-origin resource sharing. Right, that's what we're doing. We're adding that into the config. That's what we did there. So what this does is once we say app use, remember use is kind of connects our middleware module cores to this thing. And that's when we're going to do it right here. We need to, so what are we at here? We're at, I'm just going to go down here. We're at step 4, and step 4 is this part right here. So we're going to say step 4 for authentication. We need to set up the express session. We just got express session. We need to set it up. We're going to say app use, and the session is going to look like this, session. And the session is going to have a couple of pieces to it. One piece is going to be my secret. I need a secret. And the secret is going to be, well, we already have this from last week, dbconfig.secret, where we have that, right? There's my secret. And the secret is very simple. It's like, I think it says like some secret or something like that. Yeah, there it is, some secret. All right, so it's like really silly for now. And we're also going to use a couple of configuration options. One of them is save uninitialized is false. We're going to put that in there. I think that works well. And resave is also false. And if you wanted to know what those are, if you kind of hover over them, you'll get a sense of what they are. So forces a session that is uninitialized to be saved to the store. A session is uninitialized when it is new, but not modified. Choose false. Choosing false is useful for implementing login sessions. So that's what we did that one. And resave forces the session to be saved back to the session store if the session was never modified during the request. So we're just making those false for now. So that is my step 4. Step 5, we're going to set up Flash, right? And Flash, remember, is the connect Flash module. So we're going to say app.use Flash. Oops. Okay. So several steps. Step 6, after we set up Flash, we need to initialize Passport. So we're going to start using the Passport module to authenticate with. And the way it works is app.use, and we're going to say Passport.initialize. So we initialize Passport, and we're also going to initialize the session at the same time. So app.use, it's kind of both Passport.session. Okay, so we're going to do both of those two things. We're going to initialize, and we're going to use the passport. So we're going to initialize passport and session. Okay, so this sets up the express session, and once we have the session object, then we can initialize the passport session that we're going to be using here. So I want to initialize my authentication strategy. I want to be able to do that. So let's do that next. So step 7, we're going to implement the authentication strategy, implement the auth strategy. And what that looks like is we're going to say passport.use. We're going to use kind of, this is where we're modifying passport, where I want my user and I want to say create strategy. So now this is where you may or may not get user.createStrategy, you may or may not get our, kind of code hinting. And the reason why you may not get code hinting here like this, if I want to create strategy, is because the user is just a regular module right now, okay, or regular model. And we're going to modify this in 1 second. So here, notice that we're getting an error. It says property create strategy does not exist on type model. Well, yeah, because model, the model that we're getting right now is a Mongoose model. It's not a user model. And we have to convert it to a user model so that TypeScript knows what it is. This will work. If I just do it like this, even if it's giving me an error here with TypeScript, TypeScript is giving me an error. TypeScript is complaining, but JavaScript will actually do this. Okay, so let's just finish, and then we'll come back and fix this problem. The next one is I want to, step 8, I want to set up serialization and deserialization, which is like encoding and decoding, right? And this is not just any serialization, but I want to set up user serialization and deserialization. So I want to encode and decode the user data, right? That's what I want to be able to do. And it looks like this. So passport dot serialize user. And I want to call the user dot, and we're going to have problems again because we don't have this serialize user method, and you're going to see that it's going to give us an error. Okay, same thing with passport dot deserialize user. We're going to use the user dot deserialize user deserialize. We're not getting any code hinting at all, right? Method. Okay, deserialize user. Deserialize. Make sure that's spelled properly. I think it is, yes. And you're going to go like, but Tom, I don't get it. And the reason why it's doing this is because our user is just a model. That's all it is. So how do I convert our user from a model to a user model, a special model that has information about the user itself? A different kind of schema is what we need to make it. So let's go back to the user model, and we can, well, reconfigure it, right? Which is what we want to do. So going back, let's go back to the user model, right? So there's our user model. Our user model is just a regular model right now. We're using a Mongoose schema, but we haven't talked anything about Passport at all, right? And here's some stuff that we can do. So under Mongoose, we're going to say something like this. We're going to say Mongoose is going to have a special schema called Passport Local Document, or Passport Local Schema is what we want to use here. So it's a special, Passport Local Schema is a special function that we can get from Mongoose, okay? So the local schema is what we want to do here. So we're configuring it. I also want to import, this is in the user model, I want to import Passport Local Mongoose from Passport Local Mongoose. We never did that. We kind of added the module in last week. Notice, if I go here, Passport Local Mongoose. Passport Local Mongoose is a helper module to help us with authentication, username and password, serializing and deserializing, which is what we need, okay? So here I've added it in. So even though we've added them in, we have to use them. And the way we use them is down in here, where after we just declare the user schema, we want to plug in, we want to have a plugin area that we can plug in the Passport Local Mongoose object. And the way that looks here, and this is kind of like, I would say this is step 3 for the user model, because the user model has a few more, another step that's extra. So step 3 is, plug in the Passport Local Mongoose module. And the way this works is you're going to say, hey, user schema, I want to use a plugin. So Passport and Mongoose, when they work together, and Mongoose has several, the ability for you to plug in additional schemas. The thing we want to plug in is the Passport Local Mongoose object itself. Oops, undo. We want to plug this in first. So this is the thing that kind of connects this piece, Passport Local Mongoose. We plug it in. Once we plug it in, we need to modify our model. So it's not a regular model, like how it's not a regular schema, but rather we can cast it, and we can use the keyword as to do this, as a passport local schema. So it's a special type of schema, passport local schema, right? And notice that we're getting a bit of an error. It says, well, I don't really know what passport local schema is, but well, here it is. So what's the error that we're getting? So take a look. It says generic type passport local schema. It says requires between 2 and 4 arguments. 2 and 4 arguments. And we're not giving it 2 and 4 arguments. We're just giving it 1 argument, right? So we have our mongoose model. We're giving it a user object, a user schema, and we're casting it as a passport local schema. And now this is the new thing here. Now what it says here is, remember, this is just our code hinting that we're getting. So one great thing that you can do is if I right click here and if I go to definition, it's actually going to show us the definition for passport local schema, where basically it's looking for the doc type, the model, and some instance methods. That's what it's looking for, okay? So you can always do that stuff. You can always go to definition. We can also look at the type definition. There's 2 things, the definition and the type definition. Let's go to the type definition. So notice it's the same thing. So this is found in the index.d.ts file. And notice that there are 2 of them, right? One of them that is sitting inside of node modules at types passport local mongoose, and the other one is sitting inside of node modules itself in the passport local mongoose method. All right, so it's like they're the same thing. Okay, this is where it's found. So that's passport local mongoose, and it extends the schema, but here it's giving us more information. So this is new, by the way. This is not something that I encountered last semester, but it's okay because we're going to figure this out eventually. All right. Right now, if I save this the way it is, it's still okay because when it configures my user, it's going to still do. There's nothing here that's going to show me that there's an issue, right? It's actually just going to, on the user side, this part here is going to give me a bit of an error, right? One thing also to do, and by the way, to test this out, to show you what this looks like, if I was to try and use passport local schema, let's try this out. Let's say, for example, I just did this, and I said it's as passport local schema, right? Which is what I want, passport local schema, this one, right? If I did that, it adds it in anyway for me. It'll add it in. That's the way it can be done. So passport local schema. All right, so what does this do? If I cast this as a passport local schema, the model becomes now a mongoose. Take a look at this, a mongoose passport local model. That's what it does. So instead of a regular model, now it's a passport local model, which means it needs more information. It needs the model itself, the document type, and instance methods. So that's what it's missing, right? So that's what it's missing that in here. So doc type, document type, model, which is the thing, and instance methods. So we're going to fix this problem in a bit when we go up, and this is new, like I said. So let's go back to the configuration and see how that looks. So notice that we have a deserialized user. It looks great. It looks fantastic. It worked. But serialized user, still, even though it's a passport local model, it says that the serialized user needs some more information. It says that no overload matches this call. Right, it says user is user done, right, as an example, and it says the void is not assignable to parameter type user. Why? Because it's expecting a special type that we're not giving it. And to fix this problem, again, this is a TypeScript issue. I'm going to right click here and go to definition. Go to definition actually sends me to the definition where it says that where we look here, the serialized user, this is actually the type definition for it. And you can look where it's looking. It's going into node modules at types, passport local mongoose, right? The same funny module. it says that our user is of type T, right? And our callback function that's here, all right, it says the callback is a callback function that returns void, and the whole function, the serialized user function, returns void. Okay, so what is the problem? So if I go over here, it recognizes this, but it says no overload matches this call, overload 1 of 2. It says void gave the following error: argument of type user document any, and callback error any, ID any, return void. Void is not assignable to parameter of type user, user done, and void. The type of parameters user and user, look at this, user and user are incompatible. Type user is missing the following properties from the type document any. So when you look at that, it's like my user type has not been defined properly for to use. So user, although it is a like we said before, a Passport local model. Right now, there's the Passport local model, and it gives us these three. This is kind of generic typing. I know it's kind of a little bit freaky when you look at this, but don't worry about it. It's just saying that the serialized user method is missing something that it's looking for. It's looking for, we're giving it one thing and it's looking for something else, right? That's what it's saying. It says the types that we're giving it, the user type is wrong, okay? So again, I can go to definition, let's say go to definition, or go to type definition, or go to the implementation, whatever you want, right? So let's go to type definition. Here's the type definition for it. So I'm actually looking inside of @types. That's where I'm looking in my index.d.ts file. There it is right here. Okay, this is where it's looking. And notice that we have some errors here as well, right? So not just thing, but the type definition file that we're looking into is got some issues. So authenticate, that's one of the methods we're going to be using. Serialize user into serialize user. User looks like a T type. T is the template type that we're getting in, whatever the template type is, where the user extends the document and this extends the model. That's what it works like. That's how it looks like. Okay. And then we have the an error as an example, and we have void. Okay. So this is definitely the user type. If I made this into any, right, as an example, if I actually changed the model, if I did this and saved, right, and if I go back to my app.ts, then it solves my issue, right? So remember that any is a way of solving problems if you have a problem with TypeScript, all right? But what I've done is I've changed the type definition for this. Guys, I need 1 second. I'm just getting interrupted. I'll be right back. I need 1 second. Just take a look at this while I'm looking at it. And this is something that we're going to be doing. So 1 second, I'll be right back. Thanks, guys. Okay. All right. I apologize about that. All right, so this is an issue, is what I'm saying. So the user type, I can certainly call, change this to of type any. Remember, this is just the type definition. So whenever we get to this and people are like, wait, will this mess us up in some way, Tom? And the answer is not really. Remember, what we're getting is we're using TypeScript not to hamstring us or limit us. We're using TypeScript to help us, right? And TypeScript is telling us we're missing something. Because Passport Local Model extends something called document. Okay, that's interesting. Our user is not the same as this document. So what if we could change the document itself to add more information, right? More information. So the way to do that is if I go back to our model, right? Let's just close this up here, Node Modules. And I'm going to go back to my model, my user model. And what I want to do is I want to start thinking about how I can change stuff before I export my model, right, as an example. And before I want to change my, document up, I want to change my user, right, by declaring some information. So I can say something like this. So underneath here, I can say that I want to declare a global. And then the great thing about TypeScript is you can declare global variables like this as well. This is kind of I would say a hack more than anything else. I want to export my type, which is my user document, export type user document. I'm going to say that that's equal to a mongoose.document. Right, here's my mongoose document. And this is the beautiful thing. I can use an extension method and with TypeScript, and this is how you would write that. Where my username is a string, I can do that, and my email address is a string, as well as my display name, that's also a string. So the reason why I want to do this for a couple of reasons. This way, something called user document, which is what I'm doing, is I'm extending user document to include username, email address, and display name. And this will help me later on. It won't help me here, right, as an example, because basically what I'm saying is that user schema is of type passport local schema. It won't help me here yet, right? We're going to get back to this in a second. And if I go to type definition here, you can see exactly like how we had before. I'm just going to move this. This is inside of Passport Local Mongoose, where it says Passport Local Schema, Passport Local Mongoose, right? So again, if I was going to look at node modules, and if I looked at the node modules Passport Local Mongoose, here it is, index.d.ts, Passport Local Model is here, right? And that Passport Local Model is what I just changed to any. That's what I fixed right there. And I also wanted to look at Passport Local Schema, which is something else that I want to look at as well. So Passport Local Schema, it says extends schema. That's what it does. Schema is a type of Mongoose schema. And it says that if I hover over, it says all declarations of Passport Local Schema must be identical type parameters. Okay. Where Passport Local Schema, it says generic type Passport Local Schema, right? This is where it has a problem. Requires between 2 and 4 arguments, right? Passport Local Schema. So this is where the problem lies right here. So schema, the plugin schema, is of type Passport Local Schema. If I make the schema of type any, right? Again, you think about what I'm trying to do here, right? Is try and remove some of those warnings a little bit, right? So if I go back here, no errors here anymore. And if I go back to the models, we still have an error here. So this is still the issue. Generic type passport schema requires between 2 and 4 type of arguments. Okay, cool. Let's continue with this stuff because this is how flexible it is. And where is that? It's right here in the model, okay? Where basically what I'm saying is that the model itself is a passport local model. That's what I'm saying. And the schema, it says it requires the schema that I'm getting, which is here, right? Extends schema. That's what it does, and it requires more arguments than I'm giving it, right? That's what it's basically saying. It's saying right now I'm getting 2 arguments: the schema type, the plugin, and any kind of options for my Passport local options. Those are the 2 options. Where options is an optional type, I can kind of not include this one at all. But the plugin requires both plugin and the options that I'm passing through. That's what it works like, okay? So that's what Passport local schema requires. So the schema type, name, schema, collection, and all this kind of stuff is me changing the model to of type Passport local model. And I'm giving it name, schema, collection, and skip int, right? What's happening is the schema type, which is a Passport local schema, is not compatible with the schema that it's looking for. Schema is of type any, but Passport local schema says it needs more information. That's why I'm getting complaints. For now, I could fix this problem by looking into it and whatever. I'm going to ignore it. And this is what happens every semester, guys. And I'm saying this not to be facetious, but every single time the stuff is changing so crazy, if you want to talk about this, like every semester, that we're getting errors, right? This is how it works. So could I fix it by modifying the files further? Yes. I'm not going to do that here. So I'm going to just accept this error here, and that's the first one we've accepted all semester so far. So user.ts is where we're accepting it. I'm not modifying this much more so that and by the way, if I do modify, one thing to note also is this: if I modify this indexd.ts file that's sitting inside of node modules, if I ever kick this node modules off again, Passport local mongoose, right? You may see that this is going to just cause the error again. It's going to come back because it's going to regenerate and overwrite my changes. So this user of type any that I've put in here is going to change to user type T. So if I go user type T again, back to what it was before, which is the generic type, if I save this, and if I go to my app.ts, now again, you can see that that's an issue, because basically it says that the user type should be, it's incompatible. All right, so yes, I can silence the error. That's what I've done. I can silence the error by putting any. But what we need to do is dig down into this. This is our job, because that's what TypeScript is telling us. TypeScript is saying there's some kind of incompatibility that may cause a problem later. You should dig into this and figure this out. And we're going to do that, just not today. All right, so I've just fixed this problem, so I take away this problem here. We don't have a problem here anymore, but we do have a problem, which is silence this one. We do have a problem in our user model. And the model itself, right, because it's a Passport local model now, right, allows us to get more code hinting throughout the entire process. That's why we want to use this. This part right here is going to help us with other things. Okay. So again, it bothers me, but it doesn't give us, if I kind of, hook into this, it just tells us that the generic type, doc type model, instance methods, and T-query helpers requires between 2 and 4 argument types, and we've only given it 1. That's what it's telling us, right? There it is. Look, it says Mongoose model, right? It has arg1 and arg2, but the Passport local schema itself, right, requires more information, right? More information than what we've given it right now. Okay. Here's something else we could try and do. We could, instead of making this a schema type, we could what if I said that this is a Passport local schema? Passport local schema type. What if I said that this is what I want instead? Well, if you did this, then again, what you're going to see is that it only refers to a type, but it's being used as a value. So I can't, even though I want to do this, I can't do this. I have to cast it, and it won't allow me to create, it doesn't allow me to use the constructor method to construct the Passport local schema. So this is not a solution either. And I've tried this before. Okay, cool. And we're going to stop messing around with it here, because this is probably as far as we can go at this point because of our configuration that we've done here. So yeah, again, user schema, what we've done is we've cast it as a Passport local mongoose schema. The plugin itself takes multiple things. It takes 1 or more arguments, and it can also take something called options, which allows us to configure our Passport local mongoose further. All right, so let's just cancel all this stuff. We've done most of the things that we want to do in terms of our configuration with a bit of an error. We have an error that we have to deal with. Let's finish off our configuration now, just to make sure there's nothing left for us to do. And let's finally show our login and register pages. So I think we need to move on. So yeah, so we've configured serialized and deserialized user. And once we've serialized and deserialized user, we need to implement the strategy. And that's kind of step 9. So this is, step 9. We're going to implement an auth strategy. And when we do that, we're going to say passport.use, and we're going to say, we want to say user.create strategy. Actually, did we do that already? Did we not? We did that already here. Sorry, just got discombobulated here from, oh yeah, here it is. No, I was right. We're just going to use the strategy. That's what we're going to do. So we're going to say passport.use, and what we want to do is further up, right? What we did was we said that the strategy that we want to use is, something up above, and I think we're good to go. So once we've done this part, we're good. We've kind of created our strategy. We've used our strategy that we're going to be using, and we're serializing and deserializing users, and that's good enough. That's all we have to do at this point. All right, if that's good enough, if we've configured it well enough, then we should be able to see our login and register pages at this point, right? Without having any issues, right? One thing that we haven't done, and again, it bothers me that we have an error, but I'm sorry. One thing that we haven't done in our auth.ts, which is here, is our display name is blank, like we said before. So these things we want in every page, and all we've got it right now is in one spot. Let's see how this looks if we run it. So if I go back to here, and if I go to our login page, which is movie list, and if I type in login instead, let's type in login, then we should be able to see our login page, which kind of looks like this and big and ugly, okay? We have one change to make to our login page because our login page is pretty good. If we cancel, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't go anywhere yet, right? So canceling doesn't do anything. Login doesn't do anything, right? Let's take a look at these things. And the way to check this out is go into our views, into our login page. And what I've done is our cancel button, right? Our cancel button, what it does is it does nothing right now. It just does our cancel button does this, right? So we have a login button and we have a cancel button. And our cancel button, right? What it's supposed to do is we want it to clear the screen. The type is a cancel. The type is cancel. But really what we want to do is we want to make the type a reset type. That's what we want. That's kind of an error. Cancel type. Should be a reset type. Upinder, are you there? I can hear you.
Professor, I have we have an error, right, in the node module, right?
Yeah, we do.
I had the similar error I sent to you in the Discord.
Yep.
What I did was I dropped the mongoose and then I reinstalled it.
Yep.
And it worked fine. It worked fine then.
Yeah, be careful though, because you still may not have the same issue with Passport local schema, right?
Mm-hmm.
It still may not do this, right? So we can try it, but like I said, it's probably not going to do much. I'm not sure. Did you do this too? Did you cast it as a Passport local schema?
So with the node module, there was an error.
Yeah.
And then I dropped the Passport local mongoose. This one, the yarn removed, and then I reinstalled it, and then it worked fine after that.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to do that for me. I wish I was that lucky. The reason for this is because there's two, right? There's one here in index.d.ts, right? There's one here, and there's one down in here, which is the actual Passport local mongoose.
Yes.
So there's two, right? And the problem with this is that one is overriding the other one. See how here we have user T in our Passport local mongoose inside of the, and then plus in our at type. So either we remove the type or we remove the other one because there's two, right? There's at types.
Yes.
They've kind of defined it twice. So we can try doing what you said, which is I can do a yarn remove at types. We'll remove the type definition, which will be the Passport local mongoose. We can try and do that. All right. So if we type, we remove the Passport local mongoose, it says Passport local. Did we not include that?
The spelling of the passport.
I'll be okay. Thank you for that. Passport local mongoose. So this is where we can remove it, right? So just to give us a sense of that. And we don't have a clash this way, but you're going to notice that my models, in my models folder, that's not going to take care of my user issue. So this doesn't go away, right? This is something new. This is something new for our Passport, right? And inside of our configuration, which is what I was showing you. So here's our index.d.ts. You can't open that anymore because it's gone, right? So in our types, add types, right? We can't open that anymore. But inside of our node modules, Passport local mongoose doesn't have a problem anymore because there's no clash, right? However, the model itself, it says the model can't find name model. Look what it does. It does weird stuff. But this should be a type any, definitely. This is the type any for the user. So once we've done that, and if I go back to my, server configuration, which is inside of my config app.ts, again, there's no issues here, but we do have an issue in our model because the user still has the same issues. This is a new thing that basically says that requires between 2 and 4 arguments. I'll get back to this. I'll research and find out what the issue is, but it's very similar to what you did, which is sometimes you need to uninstall and reinstall. Sometimes it's not about that. Sometimes it's about something else.
Thank you, Professor.
No problem. All right, so
question, Professor. Sorry to interrupt.
no problem.
I just did exactly what you did and run my daemon and checking my web browser login. And I'm getting this error that messages is not defined. So where did we define the messages that we use in login.egs?
We did it inside of the controller. So remember that inside of the controller function, here it is. If I go into auth.ts, I define messages. There it is. And the reason
message.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, that's all.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So messages is, remember the flash message that we're going to send in there right now. So all we're doing is we can see it. The only difference between our views, if I go back to our views, so I've given you a stub. This is kind of our starter for our login. We want to replace the starter, or we want to add something to the starter where I want to have a div with a class of container. And I'm doing this different because I've had, again, some comments about, well, what if I don't want to use a container every single time? You're making me use it, and you're right. So that's why I've kind of, some people have said that in the past when I've done this course. And so this way, I'm not going to insist that you use the container unless you need it. Here, I'm going to use it, but it's not going to be something that you need to do. I'm wrapping my login, and let's just do the register too. I'm wrapping my login and register and pages in a container class, which the container class is a Bootstrap class. And the container class, it just adds a little bit of margin to the left-hand side of the page. That's what it does. But some people don't like it because they want to go right to the left side. And I want to give you guys that option. So I'll put it inside of the view this time instead of inside of the template. Typically what I would have is right here. I would have a div with a class of container. And then everything that's inside this is all in a container. But then what if I don't want that? That's a problem. Right? I have to cancel it out. It causes problems. So that's why I did it this way. Going back to our page though, let's do the login page. So again, I'm going to do localhost 3000, and I want to go to login. Here's my login page. Now it looks a little better. And my cancel, all it does is it should just reset, doesn't do anything. Login doesn't work because login, for it to work, we need to process the login page. However, my register page should work. If I click in register here, it should take me to the register page, which looks like this. Notice the register page has a couple things here: first name, a last name, an email address when you register, a username and password, and a confirmed password. So a confirmed password we haven't set up here. We haven't done that code for this right now, but it's there. Cancel also should just reset the page. That's what it should do. So that's my login and register page. Let's go back to that cancel button. I think that's also an issue there. So let's stop that. So in my register page, so this is another change. In my register page, if I go down to the cancel button, it shouldn't say cancel. It should be of type reset. Okay, that should be the type. Okay, otherwise the pages should work fine. So if I go back to the page now, and if I refresh this, and if I click cancel, it's not going to spin forever. It's just going to reset. So if I typed in something and click cancel, it's just going to reset the data that I put in here. Things to note is my pages do not include validation at this point. That's for you to do with your assignment too. Okay, make sure you validate. You do some basic validation because I can type in whatever I want here, and that's not really good. Other things that are missing: I don't have any navigation for these pages. Okay, so I can't navigate and log in and register and log out. Let's add that in right now. But first, well, we're going to put this up on GitHub because we have the ability for us to display our pages at this point. So again, I'm going to go here, and I'm going to say git add dot, git commit -m. I'm going to say enabled login and register display pages. Git push. Okay, so we've done that. So we can see the login and register pages, no problem. Okay. And this is something that we wanted to do, right? So number one. By the way, if you notice on the right-hand side here, where it says the watch task, it'll tell you where the error is as well, right? And it'll tell you exactly what the argument is without kind of looking it up. It'll show us where it is, where the problem is inside of your code. And it'll also give you there's 2 arguments or 4 arguments, but we've only given it 1. All right, so that's kind of something we have to look into. All right, good. So now that we've put these pages up, we want to be able to process these pages. So the processing part is something that I want to do after I modify my header. So my header right now has no information about how to log in and register. There's no login and register page in my header pages. And I want to change this so that way we have the login and register links here in the pages. And I also want to be able to display, when I'm logged in, I want to be able to display my movie list, but not when I'm not logged in. Guys, the way I'm looking at it right now, because of my interruption, I'm going to be a little bit over today. I'm going to keep recording. For those people who can't stay, it's okay, but I'll record it until we're done this piece. So what I want is some kind of login link. And the link will be something like this, one of these links here. Notice also that the links have like home, about, projects, and some kind of I tag, which is the font awesome tag. I want to do kind of the same thing. I want to grab one of these. And let's suppose I had a new link. The href will not be contact. It will be login, let's suppose, right? And then in the login page, it should say something like FA. Let's take a look at that. Let's find a new thing for that. So if I go to font awesome, and if I look at icons, and if I look here and I want to search for icons, I want to type in login, and I want solid, but I also want free. Please make sure you click on free. Then you can see that on login, we have a right to bracket, an arrow right to bracket. So those are the 2 that we have in there. If I also type in sign, so sign in or sign out, sign in, right? You can see that these are the brackets that we have in. An arrow, right to bracket, and a right to bracket. I think I'm going to use this one for sign in this time around, okay? This is a sign in page. So again, what I want to do is grab this link, FA solid, FA right to bracket. This is new. And if I go back to my pages and I replace my I tag here with that one, and I add in FA large, and I change this to login, then that is what's going to appear on my page, login. Okay, so let's go back there. And then if I log in, and if I go back to the login page, now we should see the login. There's a login link for it, right? So it'll take us to the login page from now on. I also want a log out link. Let's say we'll configure the logout link too. So the logout link, let's go back. I want to have sign out. What does that look like if I do sign out? Sign out looks like the other way around, right from bracket. Okay, so this kind of an opposite thing. That's the sign out page. So let's also configure that piece in the navigation. So here's our log out. We don't have a register page yet. So log in, log out, right, as an example. And the log out should have a different bracket. Instead of FA right to, the only difference is that this is an FA right from. That's the only difference. So then we'll just change it to FA right from, right? And then we'll make this so that we can see the log out as well. Okay, save. This is inside of our navigation. So if I go back to my navigation and refresh, now we'll see both. We'll see a login and log out. We don't want to see both. We only want to see one or the other. And we can detect this, right, if there is a display name. If the display name exists, right, that means that we're logged in. If the display name doesn't exist, that means we're logged out, right? So let's do that. So we can check this out. We can say that, here's a little bit of EJS. We can say that if display name exists, right, then, and we'll just kind of cancel this out like this, then what we want is that if my display name exists, then we want to do what if my display name exists? I want to, well, show my logout. That's what I want to show. So this part, because I'm already logged in, right? And then I want to use a more EJS to say, else, what if I'm not logged in? Else, I want to do this, right? Let's just get rid of, I'm just reorganizing this. Else, I want to show my log in, right? Where I can kind of do this. So remember, we can use EJS for conditional statements as well. So we can conditionally see or not see a link, right? That's how we can do it here. We can conditionally see or not see a link based on whether I have a display name that has some kind of details in there or not. If I do have a display name, then show me the logout. If I don't have a display name, then show me the login page. Let's save this page. And now we should only see the login page. Let's see if that's true. Let's go back here and refresh. And you can see now all we see is login. Okay. Hey, if we see the display name, then not only do we want to see the login page, but we also want to get the movie list page, Okay, well, let's grab another link and let's put the movie list before my logout. So the movie list link will only appear when I'm logged in, okay? So here is another link. This time it says contact, but it's not going to be that. It's going to be movie list. That's going to be the new link. We've been doing this manually up until now. And what I want to have here is some kind of friendly icon for this, but this will be movie list, right? And some kind of friendly icon to show the navigation. So save. Let's go back out to Font Awesome and let's see if we can find a movie or something like that. So movie, right? If I look at movie, we have film, we have that. So that's not bad, right? I've typed in movie. It'd be nice if we had movies, like plural, right? And we have file, video, and film. All right, so movie or movie list, there's also a ticket, and there's also video, as an example. So it'd be nice if we had something like this to show, whether it's a movie or movie list. Sometimes also there is a list that might make more sense. So a movie list, some kind of rectangle list, table list, as an example. So we might find something that makes sense. And I recommend whenever you get an icon that it makes sense to what we want. Movie itself looks like there's something to look at, like a movie. Here, a list might be something that we want to look at that is something different. Maybe we'll do it something like that looks like this. So kind of a table list is what I'm going to use. Okay. So table list, FA solid, FA table list. I'm just going to use this thing. And if I go back to here for my movie list, let's replace this and put in FA large, FA-large. There we go. Save. And that means only when I'm logged in do I see my movie list. How about that other problem that we had before? The other problem was we never know which page we're on, right? And is there a way to know, to switch out the nav link to make it nav link active when I'm here? We can use the same kind of conditional statements, but we can do it in a different way. So in our anchor tag, what if I used a conditional statement right in here? So if I said something like, we're just exploring conditional statements right now. If I said, hey, you know what? I want to include something in here, and I'm going to use a ternary operator for this. So I'm going to say something like, if my page object is equal to home, let's just say that page is equal to home, then if it's true, what I want to say is let's add a class of active, right? Otherwise, don't do anything. What if I did that? And then if I kind of put that conditional statement in there, what this is going to do is say, if I'm on the home page, if my page is on the home page, then make this link active, make it so it's brighter, right? Let's see if this part works first. So if I was to go back to my login page and I go to my home page, then, oh man, we got an issue. It says, display name is not found. Is not found. Well, the reason why display name is not found is because, well, it's only found right now in my login and logout. That means I need to have display name. Because I'm testing for display name, I need to have display name in all my pages. Oh man, I need to change stuff. Hold on a sec. That means I need to go into my, I need to go into each of my routes for my other stuff. So I'm going to go into my controllers. And inside of my controller, let's start with my index controller. I need to add in display name here. So for now, what I'm going to say is display name, right? And I'm going to put in nothing because that's kind of a blank, or if you call this a kind of a stub for this, and I'll do that for all of them. So I'll say every one of these has a display name that is blank. At least it has the display name method. Remember I said, if you ask for something from a page, you need to give it to it, even if it's empty. Okay? And same thing with the movie list itself. The movie list also doesn't have the display name, so let's add that in too. So now everything has a display name. But most of them, all of them are blank right now. We're going to fix this problem in a second. So if I refresh now you can see that I can get the home, but also that home is lit up. Take a look at how that's brighter than the rest of the links, right? Okay, that means our navigation idea worked, right? I can do a conditional statement for each one of these things and light them up depending on where I am. Okay, cool. So going back to drawing board, going back to our header.ejs, I can do the same conditional statement up here. I can do the same conditional statement all over the place. So I can just kind of lift this out here, copy it, and I can go inside of my nav link and just pop it in there, right, for all of them. Right? And I just have to change the name. So instead of page is home, this one will be page is about. This one is page projects. And this is services. And this is contact. Right? And I can even do the ones for movie list, log out, and login. So let's do that one too. So I can say this one will be, it's a little long to see, but This one will be movie list, movie dash list. This one will be, well, logout won't have it because logout, there won't be a page, right? We're just going to have the logout link and then it's going to perform logout and take us back to our login page. So, but login should have it, right? Because login should light up, right? So we'll say this will be login. Okay, there we go. All right, awesome. So let's see what that does for us if we save that and go. So if I go back and refresh, right? And if I go to About now, you can see About lights up, Projects, Services, Contact, Login, and even if I type in Movie List, it also lights up. If I had a movie list link, I don't have it because I'm not officially logged in. Nice. So our navigation has been fixed. We're done with our navigation strategy, right? So let's put that up on GitHub. So we're going to say that git add dot, git commit -m, and we'll say added or modified navbar for navigation, authentication. Okay, so that's been done. And we needed that because we need some kind of mechanism to allow us to log in and log out. All right, so cool. That's done. We can close that off. We have our display movie list. We modified that. We added a display name. We can close that off for now. We have our index. We can close that off for now. Our register and login pages. We can close those off for now. And we've done all of our app configuration for this part so far. Okay, so that's what we've done up until this point. However, we can't process any of the pages, and we have no idea how to get a display name anywhere. We have no idea how to do that yet, and let's do that piece right now. So what I want to do is I want to think about how that display name is going to work, right? And I want to do two things. I want to create a function to stop people from logging in, so an auth guard, a guard function. And I also want a special function to calculate my display name. What is my display name? Because I want to inject that display name here inside of my function. In order for me to do that, I could very well put it in every single file, but that means that I would be duplicating my code. Instead of doing that, what if, instead of putting it in every single file that I want to protect and I want to have my display name, what if I made another file, right? And the other file will be a special file that I want to put in inside of a util folder. Let's make a brand new folder in my project, right? Here we go. So inside of my server, let's make a brand new folder. We'll call that the util folder. Here's my util. And inside there, I want to put a new file. Here's my new file called my index.ts. So that the utility index, okay? So my utility file, it's almost like I want to make some helper functions. That's what I want to do. So in order for me to make my helper functions, remember that I'm probably going to need Express. So let's lift Express from my routes. So under routes, if I just take any of them, let's just go to index. I want to definitely lift Express, this Express right here. I want to grab this. Instead of me typing it, I'm just going to put it here. There we go. Okay. And I want to create a convenience function. Here's my first convenience function. So let's make a convenience function to basically to return the display name, right, of the user. Okay, so I want to be able to do that, whatever the display name is. So I want to export a function, right, which is called the username, user display name. That's what I want, where I have a request, which is the kind of an express dot request. That's what I want to have in here. It will return a string. That's the type that it will return. And what it's going to look like is this. If my user exists, then what I want to do is I want to let the user object equal to, let's just make a brand new object called user, which is going to be equal to my requested user. And now I want to cast it as a user document. Remember that user document we defined earlier? That's what I wanted to define it as. And I want to return the user dot display name. Here, look at that, right? And I want to cast it to string. So what this does is it will return the display name of the user as a string. So why did I do this? Well, remember what I did in my user model. In my user model, I defined this new thing here, this user document. I casted my user document. I extended Mongoose document, and I added in some additional things that we defined: username, email address, and display name. That's what I did that for, right? As among other things. I was hoping to fix this, but it didn't fix it. And I went in here, and now I'm using my user document here. It's a global function, a global a property that I'm using here. Otherwise, if my user does not exist, so if my user exists means I'm logged in. That's what it means. If my user doesn't exist, then I just want to return, well, nothing, right? So just like we had before. So that is my user display name utility method. Also, I need some kind of auth guard. And the auth guard, right? So again, I want to create a helper function for guarding, secure sites, secure locations. We'll say like that, right? And the way this works is I want to make a new function and use the export keyword, where I'm going to call it auth guard. Here's my auth guard, and it's going to be a type request where it's an express.request. And I'm also going to have a response, which is an express.response, followed by a next, which is my next function. That's what that's going to be. I'll put that up there, no problem. And can I do express next function? I think I do express.next function. Yeah, I probably do it this way as well. And so this is the signature, right? We don't need this up here then. And then what I'm going to do is it's going to say that if my request or my user is not authenticated, right? If my user is not authenticated, and by the way, is authenticated, it comes from my Express itself. Express has a request that is authenticated or not. If my user is not authenticated, what do I want it to do? I want to return with my response. I want a response redirect. This way I can redirect allows me to move from one page to the other, right? Lowercase, I think is what I put. I think lowercase works because lowercase is up here. Express lowercase. I cast it as lowercase. And this is why it's lowercase here. Okay.
Yeah, I mean in line 4 you have it with over E.
Yeah, I guess I did that too. I could probably be like this. But you're right. Yeah, it's express, lowercase express. Yeah, I'll come back to that. Maybe you're right. And so this response redirect to /login. And what this means is if I'm not authenticated and I try to go to this site, I want you to take me back to the login page. Okay. And then I want to call the next middleware function. So this way I can put this in between a request, this little auth guard function. All right, let's save this. This is the file, and I'm going to copy this so you can have it, this file. Let's see if I can give it to you in the chat. There's the index file in my utility folder, and I want to put this up on GitHub. So git add dot, git commit -m, and I'll say added utility functions, git push. And this is really great because once I have this information, I can include them where I need my user display name and my auth guard, right? So this is a way of making kind of like global accessible functions anywhere you want. And you have a chance to use them where you need them. So how can I use these global functions? Where do I use them? That's the next piece, right? Because now that I've used them, I want to be able, or I created them, I want to be able to use them. Well, one thing is anything that we have that I want to secure, right? I could include my auth guard. So I know I want to secure my movie list route, this thing here, right? So before I even go to my controller to display my movie list, I want to protect it. And the way to protect it, of course, is to include my utility function. That's what I can do, right? So I can do that here. I can say, let's import, and I'm going to import AuthGuard, right, from util. Okay, I'm going to include AuthGuard from util. And then once I have my AuthGuard function, I literally can put it between my URL and the function that I need to display the function to. So in other words, if I put it right in between, because AuthGuard is a middleware function I just wrote, again, take a look, right? A middleware function has a next method, right? And basically what I'm intending to do is, this is a helper middleware function, custom, that I just wrote, right? That means I can take this function and put it between another function call. Okay, so if I go to my my movie list, I can literally pop it right in here, AuthGuard. And what this does is it'll do this. It'll say, hey, go to this link, check to see if I'm logged in. If I am, right, continue. If I'm not logged in, right, then I want you to take me back to the login link. Okay. Okay, so that's what it means. So that is how you guard links. When we guard links, and again, I appreciate the people that are sticking around. I know that you guys have other courses and stuff. I'm just trying to get everything I can to you as fast as I can. If I guard a link, it stops someone from going in there. Okay, let's test this. It already works, by the way. So if I save this, and if I go back out to the page, and if I refresh now, it should redirect me, right? If I go to my movie list, right, I'm not logged in, it should redirect me. But why didn't it do it, right? Why didn't it? Well, let's take a look. A couple things, right? First, let's check to see, did I transpile? And yes, it did. Here's my AuthGuard function, right? And it didn't fail. So if I was to look at my node here, you can see that there's no issues. So that, it didn't fail, but it didn't redirect me either. Okay, let's take a look at what I said for it to do. I said this. I said, if my request is not authenticated, if I'm not authenticated, then I want to redirect to the login. Otherwise, keep going. Okay, that's what I said. So it's not quite working yet, okay, because it needs to detect if I'm authenticated or not, right? And, well, we haven't really figured that out yet, right? We haven't put that in place. But this, the idea is it's correct. This is a void function. It's not returning anything. So this function is returning void, right? It's taking my, it's checking to see if I'm authenticated. But one thing is, this is a method, and I'm calling it, my bad, is I've called it as a property. This isn't a property, this is a method. And my bad, I should have typed in that. Okay, that's the difference. Let's save that. That's an update, and try it again. So I've saved this. I've just added 2 brackets after my little helper function. I didn't type that in properly. And let's go back here and now refresh, and it should take me back to login. So every time I try and type in movie list now, it's protected. It won't allow me to even go there anymore because I'm not logged in properly. Okay, so now I've created a way of guarding any site that's not authenticated. I can list other things inside here that I can do, right? And anything I put AuthGuard in, this is for you for your assignment too, will stop me from being to go there unless I'm authenticated. Cool, awesome. All right, well, we haven't finished off the authentication method yet, and that is inside of our controller function. Let's get that registration and authentication stuff going. So I'm going to go back into my auth.ts. We have our display login and display register pages. How do I fix the controller so I can make everything else work? Well, we need to do a little bit of passport magic, is what I like to say. So let us process the login page, and I'm going to show you what that looks like here. I'm going to use passport. I'm going to say passport.authenticate. When I want to log in, I want to use the authenticate method. And I'm going to tell it that I want to use the local strategy to authenticate with. That means username and password. I want to use a callback function when I'm doing this. The callback function can have many arguments, but the ones I'm going to pass into it are error, user, and info. Okay, those are the 3 arguments I'm going to pass in. Okay, so far so good. And we're going to start like this. If are there server errors? If there's server errors, right, some kind of server error that prevents us from doing stuff, I want you to console error, the server error, and I want you to res end. I want you to stop, propagation. I want you to stop all this process and just end in an error. That's the first part. So what if there are errors? And again, I'm looking at this passport piece here for a second. Okay. I notice I'm not putting a semicolon yet because there's some other thing I got to put there. Okay. Are there login errors? That means like if somehow I haven't logged in properly. If it's true, if there's no user, right, then that's a different kind of error. I'm going to request flash. I'm going to set up request flash for the first time. Request flash requires 2 things. It requires a key and a value. All right. So the key, I remember we talked about this, is login message. The value is what I want the login message to be. And please be very generic. Something like authentication error. Right? And authentication error is very generic. You don't want to tell someone that, by the way, your username is wrong or your password is wrong. Because if I tell you that your username and password is wrong, you're going to, depending on which one I say, if I say login, your username is wrong, then I'm going to try another username, right? If I want to hack the system. If I tell you your password's wrong, that means your username is right. I'm giving you validation to a hacker or a bad actor, a malicious user, or whatever you want to call them, right? If I've told you your username is right, then I'm going to hack the password as many times as I can until they logs me out. And eventually I'm going to hack your account, right? So I don't want to tell them anything. I just want to say there's something wrong. Authentication error, right? Maybe I can also say something like your credentials are, wrong or whatever. So that's what I'm doing. And then I want to return a res redirect back to the login page. So in other words, if I've got a problem, take me back to the login page and make sure you save this login, this flash message. Okay, if there's a problem logging in. How about if there's no problem, right? So no problems. If there's no problems, that means I have a proper, we have a good username and password. If we have those, then we want to perform the login. So I'm going to say request.login, right? And I want to pass in the user information I got, this part up here, the user information that I got from my authentication information. So the request itself, the request comes with my user information. There's my user information, okay? So I want to get the user information. I want to use that. And I want to log in. But there might be other errors. So I want to get a callback function just in case there's other errors. And it could be that there are database errors of some kind, right? Maybe some other kind of weird database error. The database failed just now. If so, then I want to do the same thing. I want to console error, whatever that error is, and I want to stop the process. So don't let me continue. Okay, that's what that does. Otherwise, if there's no errors, I want to perform login, right? So I want to return res.redirect back to where I want to go, which in my case for us today, for this semester, is the movie list. I want to log me in and take me to the movie list, please. So that is my login page, okay? And what I want to do to make this work is I want to pass in the request, response, and next object, right, inside of the constructor. It's almost like a self-calling function, what this is. So this part here, all right, up here, up until here, is a self-calling function that passes in the request, response, and next object right, from the signature. That's how it works. And that's how you code the login page, process the login page. Let's save that. And let's try it out. Let's see if we can log in, and does it redirect me with a bad response on authentication error, right? So let's put this up on GitHub. So we'll say git add dot, git commit -m, and we'll say something like added process login page function, and then git push. So I added that in for you guys so you can see what that looks like. And then if I go here and I try and log in, let's refresh. So we have the latest version. And if I do something like, I don't know, admin, and let's just use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's no admin user. So if I click login, it should give me this authentication error. Look, it worked. Authentication error worked because it processed my request. Okay? Does that make sense? So this is good. So this means that I processed that the process login worked, because otherwise I wouldn't have got this authentication error. And that means it wouldn't have gone in here. I got to this point in order for me to know that. That means there's no user, and that's why I got this login message back. Okay, that's what it means. All right, let's now process the login page. How does that work? Or the register page. The register page is a little bit different, right? And it works like this. We can instantiate, right, a new user object. That's the first thing we want to do. And we can say that my new user object is a new user, right? Here's our new user. And we want to use constructor notation. Okay, so we'll put that over here. And in our new user, we want to set up a few things. We want to set up our username. Here's our username, which is the request.body. So that means from the form, the body of the form, right? Dot username. Okay, so whatever comes from the form. And my email address, notice it's different cases because that's what we did with our model. Our model has different cases too. Request.body.email address, but this is lowercase. And I'll come back to this in a second, show you where that is. And then our display name, here's our display name. That's going to be our request.body.firstname. That's how we're going to make it. First name plus our request.body.lastname. And you're going to be like, what is he talking about? Where did he get this stuff? So this is how I'm going to construct my username. Okay? Or my display name. This is how I'm going to construct it. Okay? So if you think about this, if I'm making my user here, right, here's my user, I'm making my username. How am I getting this information? Where is this coming from? Where are these coming from? These come from the names on my form. Let's go back and take a look at that. So under views, if I go to content, and if I go to our register form, here's my register form. Notice my form method is a post request. That's what something that's there. So by the way, so is my login form. My login form is also using a post request. That's why I can do a router.post or a router.get. Okay. Let's go back to my register page. So my register page is using method post, but inside of the form, my name property, all these name properties, that's the variable that's going to be inside of my code. So notice my name is first name, so lowercase first name, or camel case, and camel case last name, as well as camel case email address, right? Right? Those are my first name, my last name, and my email address for my register. That's how it works, right? I also have an area down here where I have a name, which is username, and another name, which is password, right? So all of these name properties or these name attributes in my elements in my HTML, they are all the variable names that are going to come across on the back end. That's where I got that from. So if I go back to my controller, that's where all these came from. These came from the form. They must match the form. Whatever the form is, these things here must match. If they don't match, then you're going to get empty information inside of your object. Okay, that's what's going to happen. All right, so that's the first part. So first we make a brand new user object. Notice that the absence of a password. We're not going to save the password in the database that's clear text, like we said before. Next, let's do the user registration. So it's user.register, right? User.register is going to have a couple things. One, the new user. Here's our new user information. Plus, here's where we put in the password. So request.body.password. Notice that I'm not saving it in the database this way. I'm saving it in the database by passing it through the register function. The register function will hash this password and encrypt it. So when it goes into the database, it will be unrecognizable. It will not be clear text anymore. All right, cool. Next, I want some kind of callback function just in case there's an error, just like we've done in the past. Okay? And the way this looks, I'll put a semicolon there. The way this looks is if there's an error, you're going to see the same thing. Well, then what is the error that we're getting? If my error is, there's a couple errors we can get. Oops. We can get an error that is the something called user exists error. That means you're trying to add a user in there that already exists. And for us, for our purposes, just us, you and me, I can do a console.error where I can say something in the console for us that you're trying to register the same user. That's the reason why we're having a problem. Something like user already exists, right? However, I just want to point this out. We don't want to do this again. We don't want to show this to the actual registrar, the person who's trying to register, because if I show that the user already exists, they can continue hacking and add another user and another one and another one. You know, who knows what else they're going to try and do. So I don't tell them what it is. I'm going to do a request flash, right? Where our request flash is going to use a key value pair. In this case, it's the register message, right? And the value is going to be registration error. Okay, we're not going to tell them what the problem is. We're just going to say it's a problem. Something you did was wrong. Console log, we're going to console error also. The error.name, whatever the error name is, any other error that we get, that's what we want. And I want to request flash if we have some kind of other error, right? As an example, that it is a register message, some kind of server error, okay? So I want to be able to do this. This only happens if there's an error, the username is there, and I want to do an else statement here, right? An else statement that kind of shows off this other message. So here's my else, right? Because it's either one message or the other, right? That's the way it's going to work. So whether I'm either going to have some kind of registration error, or it might be a server error. Like the server error is going to be something else. Like, you know, the server's down or the database is wrong or something else, right? Finally, I want to return out of here if there's an error. I'm going to res redirect. Remember, the res redirect basically allows me to move from one page to the other. And I want to go back to the register page. If there's an error, take me back to the register page. Don't allow me to continue the process. That's what this does, this error part right here, right? And what if there's no error? So everything is okay. User has been registered at this point. Okay. We want to, let's automatically log in the user, right? Now, it's up to you if you want to do this. Some people redirect back to the login page. A lot of things can be done here that are different, but if you want to register the user automatically, you can just do a return passport.authenticate, and you can pass in that it's a local user we're authenticating, right? And I want to pass in the request, the response, and a callback function, just in case there's an issue. And in the callback function, we can return res.redirect back to the movie list page. Okay. So this automatically logs in the user. And this is your registration. Before we move on, we're going to do the logout page really quickly because we're running out of time. Again, I will give you more explanations than this normally, but I want to go do a request.logout. Logout looks like this. You have to do for logging out. And we're going to redirect back to the login page. Res redirect again, remember what it does is it redirects you or changes your link back to whatever thing we want to do. That's what res redirect does. Okay. So that's your process register, and this is your process logout. So now our authentication functions are complete. Let's do that. So I'll say git add dot, git commit -m. We'll say completed auth functions and git push. Okay, so we've done all that. Now we need to test it because, yeah, we did this. Excellent. Who cares? But we need to test it to see that the login, logout thing works, right? And how do we test it? Well, we have a mechanism, right? If I go back to the page and if I refresh and if I log in, so if I type in admin 1234556, obviously I'm not logged in. I want to register. Let's click on register. It's going to take me to my registration page. I'm going to say my first name is admin, my last name is blank, and my email is admin@example.com. Please do this with me, guys, if you came to this point. And then in my system identification, I want to say that my username is lowercase admin. My password is 123456, and I'll just use the same one. And then if I click register, if everything goes well, it should redirect me back to the movie list page. Let's click it. And if everything goes well, hey, look at that. It redirected me back to here, to my movie list page. And what it should have done is picked up that I'm logged in now. It didn't pick that up. So I got to figure out what happened, right? Well, we're going to fix this in a second. But let's see what it did. Let's see what this did in my database. So in my database, funny enough, if I go back to Mongosh, right? And if I go to show collections, now I have a users collection. And if I go to db.users.find, this is my user collection. And holy crap, look at this. This is my password right here. Okay, this is my password. So my password is stored as a hash, right? And it gives me the salt that it used, but it doesn't tell me anything else. This is what's stored inside of the database. Is it hackable? Yes. If I have this piece, it's hackable, right? But you have to know the algorithm that's been used. I mean, it's not impossible to figure it out, but it's way more secure than a clear text password. Okay? And that is my new user, admin user. Well, now let's log out. So if I go back to here and type in, now the login link's not working, but it will in a second. If I type in log out, it takes me out and, oh man, it says request logout requires a callback function. Okay, so this is new, right? So request logout, it says requires a callback function, and it takes me back to the request logout. If I go back to where it looks at, it says, here's my express, my node modules, and you want to trace this to see where it went in your project. So there's node modules, node modules, node modules, node modules. Oh, look right here. It says server controllers auth.js line 62 column 9. Okay, let's see if that's true. So back to the drawing board. And here is request logout, right? And it says now that it needs a callback function. This is new. We never had this before. For my process logout page, that's awesome that it did that. So they've modified stuff, obviously. This is a new thing this semester. And it's amazing because our process logout page, remember that in our route, so if I go back to our route, here it is. And if I go back to my auth route uses a GET request to do the process logout page. Process logout page goes to my my controller right here. And if we follow what it says it requires a callback function. Okay, so let's just give it a callback function. And we'll say something like a console log, just because we will. We'll say something like user logged out. Okay, I'm sure it wants me to do other functions. Let's save this and let's go back to try again, and let's try the logout again. Let's see if we gave it what it wanted, and now we're good. I mean, sometimes, and by the way, guys, this is brand new for this semester. If you tried this last semester and I give you the exact code, that logout function would have just been perfectly fine. No longer. That's just how it works with JavaScript and Node, right? So you need a little bit of a callback function. I just gave it a callback function here. All right, awesome. And if we actually was to, if we're going to go to, to Node, we could see that there's the user logged out. User logged out. Okay, that's what it means. And I'm sure it wants us to do a callback function because, just in case there's an error. If there's an error, then, show it. So we can kind of do that too. I'm coding this by hand now, guys. First time for this one. So if there's an error, what do I do with it? Well, I probably want to do something similar, or I want to say something like, if there's an error, then let's do a console.error, right? And I want to output that error. And I want to res.end the error. I want to do that for sure. Why? Because if I don't do this part, I want to stop everything if there's a problem logging out, because maybe there's a problem with the server or something else like that. And I think this is what it's wanted me to do. Something like this. Save. All right, let's go back up here and put this up on GitHub. So we have a problem, git add dot, git commit -m, and we'll say that we, git commit -m, we'll say fixed logout bug, and git push. There we go. That's done. Process logout page. So logging in, logging out, and registering, we're all good. We have an admin. Let's see if we can log in again. So going back to this, we'll put in admin and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And if we do that, we're good. We're in. That'll take us to our page, our movie list page. But now this needs to change for the last thing we have to do. So I want to log out. Again, I don't have a logout link, but I should, right? And it should take me here. So how do I make that work in my code? Well, remember what we did. Everywhere we wanted to have a display name, right? Everywhere we have a display name, all of our display names are blank, right? Remember, all of our display names are blank. We can't have all of our display names blank anymore because that doesn't make any sense, right? So what we want, instead of our display name being blank, we want to call that special helper function that we can have created from our utility method, right? So let's add that in. So we'll say import the display name utility method, right? So we're going to say import, and what we want is we want display name, right? This one, user display name from util, right? And what I want to do with the user display name is I'm going to take this user display name and just pop it in here. And the way this is going to look is, if you look at the user display name, let's go to definition for that. The user display name requires a request object. That's what it needs, okay? That means I got to give it a request object here. So that means that I'm going to go to user display name and pop in the request object. Just pass that through. And I'm going to do that every single time now. So this part is this is the new way we're going to do it for user display name. And that is for my display login and display register page. But this structure with my user display name has to be everywhere. Okay, that's how it's got to be from now on. Because again, all the pages that require it need the same structure, right? That's what it needs. So that means that even inside of my movie list, where my movie list is, my display name is blank, right? I can't have my movie list being blank. I need to do the same thing. I need to import, right? I need to import my user display name from util and pop in the user display name in here. That's what I need to do, right? So that way it can process my user display name. Yeah, that's what I need to do every single time. I need to do this, right? So I'm just importing the same function instead of rewriting the function over and over again. Okay, same thing with my index controller. My index controller has a bunch of these, right, as an example. And for the same thing, I've got to pop in my my user display name in here. So again, just at the top, I'm going to import user display name from util, and in here, I'm going to pop that in. So user display name request. And I just want to replace all of this part here with my user display name. Oops, I did it too many times. Every single time here. Oops. I want to replace it. And if I do that, and if I save, and let's just make sure I save all, that means all of them are now using my new user display name utility function, right? Where I can check to see if my user's logged in, and I'm good to go. So if I did that and go back here and refresh, you can see now that I'm logged in. I need to log in. If I log in, I put admin and log in, now it's going to show me my log out. Look at that, my log out. And I got this new link, movie list, for the first time. If I go back to contact, services, projects, about, and home, my navigation bar works. I can go back to my movie list, but if I log out, my movie list link disappears. And that's how it's good. That's how it works. So great, I modified that. And let's put that up on GitHub. So I'll say git git commit -m, and we'll say something like, we configured the user to be detected, right? This is for each route, right? That's what we did, git push. So the user is being detected. We know what the user use, and we're passing it all in the display name. That means my display name is something that I could use on my navigation, right? So that's one thing that I've asked you to do. Use the display, the navigation, the username. I'm going to leave that to you, that piece, which is for assignment 2. So that means that inside of your header, this is for you to do, inside of your header here, I want you guys, when the user's logged in, so that's in this section right here, make another non-link. It's not a link. It's almost like a little information that shows what the username is that's logged in. That's what you'd put over here. All right, so that's what you need to do. And we're almost done with the tech part. The one thing that's missing is this. I want to talk about this a little bit. And here's something that is an issue. What if, I'm just putting it out there to you, what if I'm a user and I'm already logged in, but I try and log in again? Can I do that? Am I able to log in again, right? What do you think for the people that are here? I mean, the way I've written it right now, there's nothing that stops me, even though I'm logged in, to go back to my login page. Nothing. If I type in login at the top here, I can do that. Do I want to really log in a user again after they've been logged in? The answer is no, right? And same thing with register. If I'm already logged in, why would I want to register again? I don't want you to be able to register if you're already logged in. So I'm going to redirect you both times. So I'm going to say the only time that I want to be able to log in is if there's not a user that's present. If there's no logged in user, fine, log me in, right? Same thing with registration, right? If there's no logged in user, if the user doesn't exist, that's what this means, fine, register me. Otherwise, if the user does exist, right, then I want you to redirect me. So actually we'll do a return, and we'll do the other one, the return in there too. Return res redirect, right, back to the contact list page, or the movie list page in our case. So why? Because, well, the user's already logged in. Why would you want to log him in again? And then if he's not logged in, let's just return, kind of this thing. Return, what it does is it basically skips out of here. It's almost like a break statement, which is what we're doing. Okay. So this is kind of a little safeguard, right, to prevent a user from trying to register again. It's almost like a just a little piece of information that helps us out with that. Okay. Could you go without it? Yes, but would you want to? The answer is no. So let's do that again. So we'll say git add dot, git commit -m, and we'll say prevented user from logging in or registering if they are already logged in. I know it's a bit of a longer message, but whatever. Git push, git push. Wonderful. We have full authentication at this point. Questions before we move on to putting it up on Heroku and MongoDB Atlas, which we have to do now. And then we're done for the day. I know we're way over, but again, it's like I only have 2 hours to show you something that I need to show you 4 hours for, or 6 hours worth of time. All right. So any questions around, for the people that are here, any questions around what I've done? I know it's fast, but I want you guys to see the process. Going to each of these pages, you know, showing that I'm logged in or logged out. If I'm logged in, right? Or logged out. Yeah.
Yeah. Like after you added the error in the logout, I kind of got lost there.
Sure. So you're talking about the callback function and the logout?
Yeah, you added the callback function. That I got that. But then you added if error or something. I got after that. I
this
something. Yeah. But it's like if you do like a quick review, real quick. So
like why this? You mean?
No. You did that, right?
Okay, yeah.
And then you added the callback function. Oh no, I was having an error. Now I saw what I was missing.
Okay, good. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So it just required me to do it. Like this is new, right? Like I said.
Yeah. The thing is, I was trying to fix it, and I just focused on that part and missed the other thing that you did.
No problem. No problem. Yeah. So that's what it was. So basically, you know, it needed me to do a callback function. I did it, and I added my own little thing here. Okay, that's what I did. All right. So we're good to go. We've got everything working locally, and we can see that, you know, kind of on here. If I go to clear, let's clear the screen. And if I go show collections, again, we have our user, right? And if I go to db.users.find, then I can see one user. Let's add one more user to test this out one more time. And then we'll put this up on Heroku, and we'll also put it up on MongoDB Atlas. So if I want to register another user, let's try it again. So I'll register me, right? So we'll call myself Thomas Smith instead of my last name. Why not? And we'll say tom.smith@example.com will be my email address. My username would be Thomas, and my password 123456. And if I click register, then it registers me and logs me in. Doesn't tell me who I am. That's up to you to do. Log out will log me out, and let's try and log in, Thomas. And we're good to go, right? So it logs in, logs out, and all that stuff. That's pretty good. So what does it look like here? So if I was to, do a db.users.find, well, now we have two users. This is what I want to show you. We have two users. The hash is different. The salt is different, right, for each user. And the hash is different too. Like that's how the passwords are being stored, like this. All right, so again, this is the process. Notice that the dates is an ISO date that tells me when the user was created. I have an updated method or an updated property just in case when you get into the second half of semester, want to allow the user to update their password, right? Or change their password. I haven't given you the details on how to do that, but if you wanted to do that, your updated property would allow you to kind of look at the profile. This is kind of like the user's profile, if you will. And you can add other things in here as well. Like for example, the user image, if you wanted to have an image where the user image points to somewhere in your files, kind of like a list of images for each user. Maybe you have a small database for that, right? Some kind of data store for user images. Or maybe a default image for the user when they're logged in. Like there's a lot of little things you can do for your profile. Maybe you also want to add additional information for the profile if you want to, so that the model itself, the user model itself would be different. Maybe you'd want to add in other information other than this. You could add things like your first name and last name for the user, where you can capture that information if you really wanted to, phone numbers, a contact number for the user, as well as address information. One thing we haven't covered here is roles. I haven't covered any kind of role. Remember that there's two parts of authentication, or one part is the authentication piece, which is who are you? And the other piece is what can you do? That's the authorization piece. And we haven't covered roles here, like what is the user able to do? Are they able to look at the movie list? Are they able to add their own stuff? A role, we could add a role object here that could assign a role to the user by default. For example, the user is just a regular user, or maybe the user is an admin. And if they're an admin, they can have access to one kind of site. But if they're a regular user, they only have access to another site, right? Or another part of the site. So that is also something we could expand on for your user schema. Now, again, we haven't done this, but we could. All right. So this is great. We've got this going, and I want to put this up on Heroku, and I want to create my database first on MongoDB Atlas. Let's do the MongoDB Atlas now first. So again, I'm going to go up on MongoDB Atlas. If I type in MongoDB Atlas, right? And what I want to do is log in. So it's going to ask me to log in, so sign in. I'm going to sign in again with Google. There it is. And yeah, that's me. It's going to go through the authentication process, log me in. And what I want to do here is notice that I have COMP229 M2022 section 1 as a database. I'm going to make another one here. So I want to, and again, you can see these are all the kind of databases that I've created up here. I want to make another one. I want to make COMP229 for you guys, M2022 section 2. That's you guys, right? Let's do that. So the way to make a new database, right, is where it says database deployments. You can have as many as you want. As long as you use free, you're good. I want to create my new database. It tells me what kind of database do I want, right? Do I want to make it serverless, a dedicated, shared? I'm going to make it dedicated. I'm going to go down to the type of provider and the region. We don't care about the provider, but we do care about Azure as the default region. Why? Because Azure gives us the ability for us to choose something like Toronto, Canada, which is where we want to be in, right? There it is. And if I scroll down, we have to keep scrolling down. The cluster tier is important. We don't want anything but free. Okay, we want a free tier. Okay, so right now you can see that the default is 58 cents per hour. Okay, that's not what we want. Okay, so these are, I'm just gonna open this up so you can see all the settings. And there's the cluster name. You can choose the cluster name too. All right, so so how do I make a free tier, right? So look, here's tier M30, right? And cluster tier is here. And if you go back up, right, here's your global cluster configuration. So I can open this up too. That tells you M30 and up, right? And that's dedicated. What about serverless? Serverless, if I was to choose that, again, you know, as an example, it says for application development and testing or workloads with variable traffic and minimal configuration required. This one is for production. Okay, we don't want production. We want this or this, even shared, which is even what we want. Something like really simple, right? Again, for learning and exploring MongoDB in a sandbox environment, shared. That looks like the one we want. Not even serverless, but shared, right? And notice that on the bottom, it turned to free. Free, right? Which is what we want. We want free services. Again, we're choosing Toronto, Canada, right? That's our thing. I chose the shared option up here at the top. I scroll down and cluster tier. Again, you can open this up. It's using the shared tier, this one. And no backup, because that's shared. And the cluster name is cluster 1. I want to create the cluster. Okay, I want to create the cluster. And that's the first piece you do. You make sure it's shared. It says the project or same project. Let's make a brand new one. So let's do that again. So new project. Okay, you can only have one free cluster per project. And here I'm going to make a brand new project. The name of the project is going to be COMP229 M2022, and you guys are section 2. I'm going to click next, and I want to go through the same process again. Add or invite members and set permissions, right? I'm the project owner, right? We're going to add members later. I'm going to create the project. If you wanted to add other members, you could do that. I'm going to here build a database for the first time. Here we have some options again. Notice it just gives us bigger values here. So serverless, 10 cents kind of a per 1 million reads is what it is. 0.08 cents per hour starting off, or free. I like free. Again, we're going to go shared. I want to go Azure Toronto, which is the closest place. And I'm going to keep it as cluster 0 and click create cluster. And it should be doing it right now. Now, username and password. All right, so create a database using username and password. It says that this is what we want to do. And I want to create a username, right? So I'm going to use Thomas. But I'm going to auto-generate a secured password. Okay, so let's auto-generate that secured password. We can look at it. It looks like this, right? And I want to copy it. I recommend doing this when you do this the first time. And I want to create a new notepad and pop that in here, all right? Because that's the password that I'm going to use. Okay, so I'm just going to pull that aside for now. All right, so that's the password. That's why we copied it, because we can't get it back again. Once we've done this for the first time, once we create the user that has access, we can't do this again. Okay, so I'm going to click create. And once the user's created, this is good. Down here to our local environment, it says, okay, so where do you want it to connect to, right? Keep it, please, in my local environment, and type in the IP 0.0.0.0, right? And this will be, everyone. So you can access it from anywhere. Or we'll call this anywhere. Anywhere, right? So that's what this IP address does. 0000 is the anywhere address. I want to click add entry, and that's exactly what it is. It's the anywhere IP, finish and close, right? And once we've done that, it says, congratulations. It says hide quit start guide in the navigation. You can visit this project settings, I'm not going to hide it. I'm going to keep it up so we can see it again. All right, now what it's doing is it's deploying the cluster. So it takes time to deploy. All right, so that's the first thing. So first thing we did was we created a database, right? We made it free because that's the way we want to do it. We chose Toronto because it's close to us. This is where we're at. You can choose, if you're watching this online and you're coming in from another place, you can choose another, kind of closer cluster to you. And what we need to wait for is for the cluster to be created. So now that the cluster has been created, notice that it's not moving anymore. It says cluster 0. What we need to do is it says there's a couple things. One is connect. How do we connect to the cluster? There's also browse collections. We don't have a collection yet, right? And we have other information. Let's click connect. Connect basically gives us information on how to connect to the cluster, to the online database. So it says connect using MongoDB Compass. That's not what we want to do. Connect with MongoDB Shell. That's not what we want to do. Connect with your application. That is what we want to do. So click that. And it gives us some code on what to do to connect. It says our Node.js version 4.1 or later, right, is the one we're going to use. And this gives us a little code for us to do that.
Sorry, where do you choose that to connect the cluster?
Here, connect.
What?
Connect.
Oh, I have to wait for the cluster to be created, right?
Yes. Once it's created, it'll give us this connect button, and then we get this connect your application object. What I want to do is I want to copy this thing, copy it, and I want to take it back to my notepad. So here's my notepad, and I want to kind of space in there and paste. And notice where it says password. I want to take my password that I copied from earlier. I want to cut it out of here, and I'm going to put it right in there, and that is the password for this user. right? And now I have a connection string. Look at that. That's the connection string for me. Okay. Now that I have that, notice that it finished deploying because now I have other options. View monitoring and browse collections. That is now available. That wasn't available before. Okay. There's no collections. If I go browse collections right now, there's no collections. I can add my own data to my collection. Let's add my own data, right? So click add my own data. I need a database name, and my database name is going to be called the media database. My collection name is going to be called the movies collection, okay? And there's other options. You can choose a capped collection. Capped collection is a fixed size collection, no. And a time series collection, which is efficiently store sequences of measurements over a period of time. So I don't want to do any one of these. And I want to click create. So this is going to make an empty collection, right? So media is the database, movies is the collection, and now I need to enter some data, right? So on the right, the very right area here, it says insert document. Now there's other ways to get my data in here, but I want to show you how to insert things by hand. So if I go here to insert document, then it says, hey, look, this is a way of inserting the document, but I don't want this view. I want this view. Okay, this view right here. And this is perfect, guys. Guess why? Because I can go back to my Visual Studio Code. Under my client, I have a data folder that I made for you last week inside of my movies.json. I have all of this data right here. So this is my first piece of data. I don't want the curly braces. I just want this part right here. I want to copy this out here, copy. And I want to go over here, and between the curly braces and after this, I'm going to insert a comma in here and then press paste. And I have my data, right? So this is the data for one of my documents. And if I click insert, now if it works, it'll say valid. If it doesn't, it'll say invalid. Let's try it again. So what could be the issue? So again, if you look here, I have my document, and this is this. What it's actually doing is I need to do this part. Sorry, I need to do this part. So ID is here. This is the entire ID. And what it's looking for is all of this. Let's try this again. So all of this part. So that's what it's looking for. Something like looks like this. Okay, cool. So maybe this works. And if I was to do that, it says insert not permitted while document contains errors. Okay, so where are the errors in my document? Right, so this is the document itself. So there's ID. Right, here's my comma. Right, so what could be wrong here? How do I add in my data in here? Well, let's think about this for a second. Right, think about this for a second. So here's my ID. Right, so my ID is actually, it looks like this. We can reformat the document to look like this. This is my ID. Okay, so that's my ID. I want to do my next piece is here, right? And that means, again, I just want to do this piece. I don't want to do the curly braces, just this piece. So grab that and put it in, and now it computes. So this is the ID with curly braces, and this is the other part of the document. Click insert, and it's done. So there's my first document. Let's do another one. Again, let's take the second part, which is this. Copy this, go back to this option, and I can put a comma after this and paste it and insert it. And the second document is up. And this is our test data. That's why we're putting it up, okay? And then insert the third document, okay? So I go over here and we go back to our data. I want to grab just this part right here, copy it, and go in here, put a comma, and insert it like that. And we're good to go. So that's the third document we have up. So this is some documents up there. Okay. So this is definitely a way to get data in here. But there's other ways of getting it in here as well, right? You don't have to insert one at a time. That's silly if I had to do that every single. Matter if I had 10,000 documents, that's insane. And so there's other things, other ways we can talk about it. We don't have time today. We can talk about other utilities that allow you to insert data automatically as opposed to the way I did it right now, okay? So I don't want to insert things like this if I had lots of data. I just want to insert things like this now just for a few pieces of data, just so for testing purposes, okay? That's what I did here. All right, great. Now that I have this and I have my connection string, which is this, I want to switch out my connection string locally so I can connect to my database remotely. Okay, let's do that next. So now that I have my database, I'm going to go back to my Visual Studio Code. Here I am. And remember what I have in my configuration for my DB. I have something called local URI, which is just me locally. Let's make a remote URI. And my remote URI is going to be this string right here that I copied earlier. I'm going to grab that. I'm going to put that in here. That is my remote URI, okay? And because I'm switching from my local URI to my remote URI, so I can switch between the two, I'm going to change my host name to remote host or MongoDB Atlas. So I know this is for me. So I know that I'm actually connected to MongoDB Atlas, not my local database, not this part, okay? Saving that. And then when I go back into my configuration, I'm going to hard code. Later on, we're not going to hard code, but I'm going to hard code my connection instead of using my local URI for testing, right? So just to show you this. So down in here where I do my DB configuration on line 34 of my app.ts, instead of using my local URI, I'm just going to switch this out to my remote URI, okay? Which means I'm going to connect to the database online that I just made. I'm going to save this, and as soon as I do, if I go back to Node, it's going to say, if I'm successful, connected to MongoDB at MongoDB Atlas. There it is. I'm successfully connected now. Okay, so that means that I can't log in right now, right? Because I don't have a user's database online, right? Well, let's take a look. So going back to this, and if I go back to my login page, and if I refresh, and I can see all of this. So here's this part here. But if I want to access my data, and if I try and go to my movie list, it's going to redirect me back. If I want to log in, I already have an admin user locally, right? But if I try and log in now, it's going to say, nope, admin doesn't exist. Let's register the admin again. Remotely. I'm registering the admin now because I'm connected to the remote database. To prove this to you, let us stop this database altogether. So again, I'm going to go back to Visual Studio Code, and I'm going to go to Mongosh, and I'm going to quit. So I'm out of Mongosh. It's gone. Let's just kill this. And then into my database connection, I'm just going to kill the database. So there, no more database locally. Gone. Okay. And I want to authenticate. So I want to register, and I'm going to register my user again, admin, and then admin at example.com, admin, password 123456, 123456, and click register. And if everything goes well, I've registered, but, well, I don't have any users. Oh, man, what happened? I thought that I would have had users by now if I'm logged in. Huh? How come? I should have users, right? Let's log out and see what happened. Okay, so let's go back out to my cloud and let's refresh. Let's refresh. And we can see I have a collection called movies, right? Here's my movies collection. Here's my media database, right? Here's my media database and my movies collection. But where the heck did my users go? Huh? I got two databases. I got a test database with movies and users. What? No way, man. Let's kill that database. Let me explain this for a second. The reason why I have both, is because of my configuration. If I go back to my, just to show you this, if I go back to my db.ts, it says I'm going to connect to the server online in MongoDB Atlas, and then I trudge along, and then there's going to be somewhere where I have some kind of database information, right? Because look, it says MongoDB net, and then it says retry rewrites, and, well, there's no database information. I need to do something like, well, I don't know, /media, right? To tell it where I'm going, right? And that's not something we were given. Let's try that again. Save. I'm just pointing this out because this is common. These are common errors for people, right? They're like, I don't know why, but I can't see my data, but I did this and I followed your instructions. Well, you didn't follow all of them, right? Because one of the things we want to do is we want to specify the remote URI and kind of what the remote server is. Actually, that's not where it should be. Let's not put it there. It needs to be put right before the rewrite, the retry writes here. So it should be here actually. So media retry writes here. This is where it's got to be. So save. Okay, so now it's connecting to the media database. Otherwise, you won't tell it where to connect to, and that's not what we want, right? We want to tell it where to connect to. That's the database name, media. All right, let's go back out and try that again. So back to our drawing board, right? We want to register, and I want to register an admin user again one more time, right? Admin at example.com and admin 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And register, and if everything goes well, we're registered and logged in, and now we have data, right? And this is a great, kind of a good indicator that everything is okay. Let's log out again and test what it looks like up online on MongoDB Atlas. So now, if I refresh, you're going to see that I have 2 collections, right? I have a movies collection and I have a users collection. Look at this users collection. There's my user now. And you can see that the user looks very similar to what we had before. We also have this test database right here. Because why? Well, I need to delete it, right? Let's try this again. So to drop the database test, type in the name to confirm. I want to do this one more time, make sure there's no test database, right? So let's refresh one more time and make sure there's no test database here. Sometimes that's kind of glitchy. And you notice I have movies and I have users. And my movies and users are exactly as they should be online. Now that this is working on from my Visual Studio Code, right? From Visual Studio Code, I have it working online, which means my local NodeMon is connecting to my data online, right? Now I want to push this whole thing to Heroku. Now, after I've got everything configured, right? Not before. Before, if I pushed it to Heroku, I would have too much information for me to go to. Okay, nice. So let's go back to Heroku now. Last part, Heroku. And I'm going to log in. It's going to ask me to log in with my identity. Okay, I'm logging in. And once I'm done, I want to go to my COMP229. So let's say COMP229 in the summer 2022, right? And you can see I have section 2. That's you guys, right? And what I want to do is I want to push this out. I want to push this to my, or make a push to Heroku Live Site section 2. Cool. Let's try this out. So locally, remember that on my desktop, I have inside of Centennial, in my M2022, I have this Heroku section, Live Site section 2. And what I want to do is I want to just hop out of Visual Studio Code for a second. But before we do this, we want to push this up to GitHub. So git add dot, git commit -m, and I'll say switched URI to remote, and then git push. So that way locally we've done all of our pushing and configuring and all that kind of stuff. Now I'm going to close off Visual Studio Code for now. Okay, it's important to do that. And I'm going to go into my week 6. I want to grab everything from here, right, except for my node modules. So grab everything, not node modules, and go into my Heroku Live Site for section 2. And I want to delete everything first. Delete. It's important to do this way, but not my .git folder, and paste in there. Notice I'm not pasting in my node modules, just my other stuff. Okay, still taking a pile of work. Actually, it's already, for whatever reason, also using my node modules, and I didn't choose to do that, but anyway. That's including node modules. If it wasn't, it would be done by now. That's why I don't like doing it this way. I know this has been a long one, guys, but I had to do it so you see the whole thing. And that way you have everything you need for assignment 2. And it's recorded for everybody, even for the people that couldn't stick around. All right. Oof, there it is. All right, so now let's check it out. So we're going to say take this part and put that into Visual Studio Code. So again, I just want to grab this and put it in here. And if we do, and if everything goes well, we should be able to check to see, is it correct? So if I go into my db.ts, we should see this new information. Okay. And we're ready to go. We can say here, we can say that, here we go, git add dot. That's all those things changed. So switching everything around. Right? And then git commit -m, and we'll say updated project to connect to MongoDB Atlas. Git push, and once it's pushed up to GitHub, if everything's successful, yay, then we can go watch it here in activity. If I go to activity, as soon as it's pushed up, because my my project is watching my Git repository, if everything works, we should see it kind of fix this issue. So we should see that it's going to be updated, right? Now, here's the thing. If we don't see it updating, like how we're not seeing right here, there's two possibilities that are problems. One is in my deployment slot, I didn't put automatic deploys, right? Now here it is, automatic deployment. Or if I go to my activity, I'm just too quick, like it's happening right here. I can actually view the build progress right here. And you can see that it's almost done. Awesome. So I can grab that link. This is the link for my for my Heroku, and I should be able to see it live. Here it is live now with the new link. Notice that I know it's new because these things light up, and last time it didn't. And if I go to log in, oh, there's an issue. Okay, that's my first issue that I encountered online. My login has some CSS problems. Okay, how do I fix this? Because my CSS somehow wasn't detected. Going back to the drawing board, right? Well, let's take a look. So in my, it's all about pathing. So in my index.ejs, you can see what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to go to content, capital C, right? Content, capital C, app.css. That means in client, content, capital C, and there's no, for whatever reason, app.css in here at all. Look, it's missing. I don't know how, but it's missing. And same thing, let's just check out somehow my login made it, and my register made it, but now my app.css, is like completely missing. Did I put it in the wrong spot? No, I don't know how that happened. That's weird. That's bizarre. I don't know why, but let's put it in. So going back to, wow, that's weird. In week 6, is it not in there? Client, contact. Wow, it got deleted from here too. That's weird. That's really weird, guys. Right? So let's just copy paste it. I don't know what I did. There it is. And let's also put it in the right spot. That's just my weirdness. That's nothing to do with you. That's me. And let's copy paste it there too. I don't know what happened. That's weird. There. Excellent. Let's put that up. So I'll say git add dot git commit -m, and we'll say we added app.css. That was weird. That should have been up from the beginning, but whatever. and go back to activity. And if everything goes well, we got to wait, because once we waited a second, it's going to, there it is. It's going to detect our view, our build. We're going to rebuild everything again. This is how it works, right? And by the way, look how it said, because I resolved node version 8.10, it resolved 8.30, and it kind of installed its own versions of node, npm, and yarn up here. And now hopefully we'll be able to refresh. Let's refresh this link. And no, sometimes it takes a second to propagate, and I most likely have, there it is. That's what it should look like. And if I log in, it should allow me to log in and connect to my database. And that is online. Guys, check this out. This is the link for you. And if it doesn't work for you, then something's wrong. Maybe you can check it out and see if this works for you. Check it out. Check mark if it works for you, X if it doesn't. And for the people online, here it is too. So yeah, lots of work to do. Yeah, works for me locally. It should work for you. Like if you put it up in your GitHub repository, like if you try my link should work for you. Okay. But yeah, that's weird that it doesn't work for you remotely, Elias. It could be a pathing issue for you, but you should be able to, see my stuff now online. All right, thank you for that. So that is the process. Okay, notes before we go for the day and stop recording anyway, and I'll take questions. Notes. For your assignment 2, here's where you're going to lose marks. You cannot use my deployment. Okay, so my deployment, so using my information to connect to your database and modify my database is not allowed. Some people have done that in the past. So if you use my deployment, you will lose all your marks for your MongoDB Atlas. It won't work that way. You must use your own deployment, which means you have to have your own MongoDB Atlas account, and you need to use your own configuration details, and your URI, which is this URI, right, in your configuration, this must be your own. If you use my configuration, you will get 0. Yes, go ahead.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Maybe next class or something, you will teach us to use an environment variable for that credential there.
Yes, I can show you now. So the way that works is if you're going to use if I want to make an environment variable for my remote URI instead, let's just call it remote URI. What you can do is you can go to Heroku, right? And you go to your Heroku dashboard, right? And if I go to my overview shows me my Heroku itself, right? There's resources. So there's some resources. There's deploy, which is what we've been doing, right? And metrics, access, activity, and settings. Under settings, right, you can actually reveal your configuration variables, right? And there's domains, you can transfer ownership and a bunch of other stuff. In here, where we have our configuration variables, we have a key value pair that you can add it in here. So under this, you can put in a configuration variable called remote URI, and then I can put the value of that remote URI in here. So for example, instead of me showing this all the time, I can instead grab this string and put it right in here, right? And then click add. And what that does is it hides the details from my remote URI in here, inside of my configuration variables. Does that make sense, Elias? Right? So that is where it would go.
Yes, definitely. The thing is, I didn't use random password. I used a personal password, so I wanted to put it there.
Yeah, it's fine. So now, how do you?
For example, assignment 2, it's okay if I use that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
So what you want to do is in my app.ts now, instead of you using the remote URI the way I have it, which is clear text, right? So again, so how do I use? Here's a question for you guys. How do I make this remote URI use my environment's remote URI? Right? Because, well, there's some hints, right? Here's a hint. So remember that in my server.ts does one of these. It says process environment port, or 3000. Saeed says, I do not understand how to not use my configuration. What I mean is you need to set up your own URI. This is my URI. I set my database up. You need to set up your own, Saeed, right? My username and my password. You need to have your username and your password on your database. This is my database, right? So you need to have your own link. Some people, what they do is they use mine and they think that's okay. It's not okay, right? You need to set up your own. All right, but now let's go back to what I was saying. So if I go back to server.ts, server.ts says process.environment.port. That is my port, is my variable, right? What if I did the same thing here? Instead of using this, I said process.environment.remote URI. How about if I did that, right? And that hides the details about what that is. I've saved the URI in my remote, and this is only, by the way, on Heroku live site, so it's not on my local stuff. Let's push this up. So git add dot, git commit -m, and I'll say moved URI info into environment variable, git push. That's what this does. So it allows me to use Heroku's environment variables instead of my, kind of clear text, which is what you want, Elias. All right, let's take a look here. Activity.
Yes, but I got another error in the app.ts after changing.
Let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. So here it's deploying, deploying, and I'll shut this down for a second so we don't have that up. And once it's done deploying, there we go. Build succeeded. We want to wait. And it's going to give us a link. When it gives us a link, everything's good to go. Here it is. Copy. And let's use something else. Let's use, like, I don't know, Firefox, just to make sure it's not cached, so we know it's real, right? And if I go in there and connect, I'm connected. This is Firefox instead of Chrome. It doesn't matter, right? Say it says, you mean your own Atlas account? Yes, and your own username and password. All right, and then I want to log in, and I want to go admin, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? And if I click login, and if this works, guess what? I'm using my remote URI now, right? Which is hidden, and it's not something that's being shown. However, I want to mention something, guys, all right? That there still is a security problem. Here's the security problem. Even though I made it and I put it inside my remote URI, right? Be careful. If you want to use something like SendGrid for your email, sending email around with a contact form or something like that, because SendGrid and other kinds of third-party providers that give you access to relay your email around or whatever, they do not allow you to do what I just did. Let me explain. So up online, right, we have our remote, which is our GitHub, right? And under GitHub, here's Centennial College. And if I go back to my Heroku live site, take a look at what happened. Although it says moved URI info to my local environment, and if I look up online, here's my config and my DB, it says, look, here's my process and remote URI. Yay, awesome, right? Wrong, because it's not awesome. If I went up here and put it here for the first time ever, in my commit history, if I go to my commit history, and if I look at the previous commit, added app CSS, and if I go in there, right, so let's browse from that, and if I go into my server, and if I go into my config and into my DB, oh man, here it is again. And this thing will complain. So a lot of times to fix this problem, before you put it up on, make it live, make sure either you wipe out your commit history, because remember, this is just your remote. You don't care about, keeping good, commits here necessarily, right? Your commits and all your commit history are here, right? In your main repository. This is where all your commits are happening. This is your development, project. But your deployment project's got to be super clean, all right? Which means that online, you cannot have any history of any kind of critical URIs or API information or anything like that that is available in any one of the history, any one of your commits. Because what GitHub will do is hunt through them, and it'll report you to that third party. All right. For us, because we don't have such a requirement, this is okay. What I just did. But in the reality, if you're going to use somebody else's information, or if you really wanted to hide your information, if it was critical for you to hide your information, you would not put it here, because even though it doesn't show it here, it will show it in your history. Okay. Elias, are you good now?
Yeah, how can I delete that that history just for that file?
Yeah, you can't. What you need to do.
Oh, I can't?
No, what you need to do is you need to do this. You need to go back to, here's a way of doing it. If I was to go back to my Visual Studio Code and I want to wipe out the history, right? Then what I want to do is I want to make a small silly commit, like for example, something like I want to change some secret to my secret, let's suppose, right? So here's my secret, right? A small silly commit like this, right? And then what we're going to do is something like this. We're going to say git add dot git commit -m, and we'll say changed secret. And what I want to do is I want to do git push --force. A lot of times --force will wipe out everything. This is a way of doing it. Okay, if I did this, sometimes it'll work. It'll wipe out the previous commits. Let's see what this does. It may not. Okay, so let's go back to this and refresh. And you're going to see that if I go back to this thing, it has 5 commits and it didn't work. Let's take a look, right? And here's my app.css. And if I go back, if I go to this, you're going to still be able to see, well, this, which is not what we want, right?
Professor, another question.
Yeah.
Sorry for asking a lot of questions. I don't know if you already checked assignment 1, because I removed from my tried and modified that, or if I have to put it back, if you haven't checked assignment 1, right?
I haven't checked it yet. No.
Oh, so let me put that back.
Yes, please. So what about, how do we wipe it out? How do you wipe this out? Well, a couple things you can do, right? Remember that when we want to overwrite, it's almost like I need to create a brand new Git repository. I want to get rid of those commit. I can't remove a commit, right? Because that's part of my history, right? So let's look it up. If I want to remove all commits but the last one. So how do I do that? So remove all commits from branch, right? So how do I do that? So it says delete commits from a branch in Git. And it says git reset hard head. It says careful, this will delete your working directory changes. Be sure to stash any local changes you want to keep before running this command, because it actually will delete your stuff too. It'll delete your files, right? So if you already pushed it, you'll need to do a force push to get rid of it, right? So or git push origin head -force, right? So that is something we can try and do. Let's try this out. So I'll say git push, just like it says here, origin head -force. Let's try that. It says everything up to date because there's nothing to push, right? Because we haven't done it, right? And there's other things you can look up. There's ways of deleting your stuff, but the easiest way to do it is, and I hate to say this, is delete your Git repository, right? So take a look at your repository online. Let's go to desktop, and so go into this and delete everything, including your .git folder. Copy everything back in, make a brand new Git repository, go up online and kill your Heroku live site, this one, redo it, make a new one, and then reconnect it to your MongoDB, your Heroku, by going to the deployment slots, disconnecting and reconnecting, and it's a bit of work, but you can get rid of your commits. You can do it. All right. You just have to restart everything, right? But it's only for your deployment site, guys. Do not get rid of all your commits for your, because it's private, right? Your private is something else. Oh, by the way, you could also connect a private link here, right? So if you made it private, that also would suffice, right? So example, if I made my branch or my repository private, who cares what I have in my commits, right? As an example, because my commits are private, right? That's the other way to do it. But if it's public, you need to delete everything and do all this funny business. Okay, I think I've covered way more than I wanted to today. So let's go back to this. So this week, what we did was we did this. We couldn't finish full CRUD. We didn't have time. We did authentication. We downloaded login EJS and from eCentennial. We protected our secure pages, which we only have one, which in this case is our movie list, right? That's what we did. We connected MongoDB to Atlas and Heroku. We also, for authentication, we also created we updated the main navigation to include login, register, or login, logout, right? And movie list. We did that, right? So those are the things we did this week. All right, updates before we go. A little bit of administration before we go. One thing is, assignment 2 is due this Sunday at midnight. Okay. Again, you have to do full CRUD or your own contact list with authentication. That's what's required for assignment 2. Please watch the video from last week for details. I've got details on what I want you guys to do there. And remember that next week there's no lecture during our time. Instead, I will release your midterm test, and I'll give you the details for your midterm test. Plus, I'll give you a starter project to start with in order for you to complete your midterm test. Questions before we go? Please. Absolutely. Please do that. Make sure that I can see your previous stuff, because I don't want you guys to wipe it out, because I want to see like two separate, it should be really two separate assignments anyway. Assignment 1 repository, assignment 2 repository. Okay, next.
I made one mistake on the cooling on the first mission, and then I texted you.
I know.
And I made a second submission with the current.
Okay. Okay, that's fine. All right, don't worry, Ricardo. If I have a problem, I'll email you or I'll connect with you. Okay.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
I think I have a problem that requires your attention.
Okay, Elias, talk to me. What's your problem?
Yeah, the thing is, I was doing this week with you, so I did everything and try to push again in the same live Heroku. And now I renamed back the folder, and I was trying to push back the same thing I had previously with my portfolio, and I'm getting an error. Is there a way, like, to with GitHub to put it back to the commit that I did, and it was June 6th, right?
Yeah, you can revert. If you look up how to revert.
Yeah, so, there's how to revert.
Yeah, so you do, if you look up how to revert, you can revert, right? So if you revert, there's two ways of reverting: reverting on Git and reverting on GitHub, right?
Yeah,
so
on GitHub.
Yeah, so if you revert GitHub repo to previous commit, if you look that up, it'll give you details on how to do it, right? Right here. So if you go reverting a commit, how to do it, right? So take a look at this link. Here's the link, right? And this is how you would get it done. Yeah, so that's how you do it. It's not that difficult, honestly. If you follow the things here, it'll literally will say revert changes, right? Now, that's fine. But what will happen also? You need to synchronize. If you revert on GitHub, then you need to revert locally too, and you need to resynchronize that, right? So just FYI, right?
Yeah, I was trying to do it like locally and push again, but I got an error.
Yeah, no, just revert. You can, if you revert, it would work fine. All right, worst case scenario, again, you can always, there's other ways to fix it. You can force push your changes. And if you force push your changes, you can also fix your problem, usually. Which means if you made a change and you wanted to, if somehow the change wasn't taking effect or it was stopping you from taking effect, you can always push things back up the way they were and it's going to work fine. Okay. In other words, you can go back to a previous version of your code. That's also something you can do. Remember, you can always download previous versions of your code too, right? Because online, the beautiful thing about GitHub is it gives us all kinds of information, right? So let's suppose that I was at Heroku Live Site section 2, and well, I'm here at this commit. Take a look. This is the commit that I've got here. I'm at that link, right? And I want to download, right? So downloading allows me to download from any time I want, not just from one part, right? So just be aware of this, that you have the ability for you to look in files. You can also download from any point in time. You can download the entire structure locally. You can also kind of hop back to another commit locally anytime you want to that commit, because you can revert locally as well as remotely. And then, oh yeah.
If I download it from you?
Oh yeah. Yeah, because it'll have everything, right? It has all the history, right? Unless you killed the history somehow, right? So, okay, any other questions before we go for the day administratively? Because that's the one thing I wanted to cover. So again, the questions that I always get with the assignment is, can I use I have problems, Tom. Here's something I get. I have problems, Tom, with my MongoDB Atlas, and I used yours. Is that okay? The answer is no. It's not okay. If you can't do your own MongoDB Atlas, that part is a fail for you guys when it comes to your assignment. You need to figure that out on your own. And I've already shown you the process and on the videos previously as well. So you should really do that on your own. Please don't use mine. That's not something that I want you guys to do. The other thing I get is I got most of it done, but I don't have any of my CSS working. Okay, so you lose marks for your CSS, right? That doesn't matter if it's your assignment, 1, 2, whatever, okay? I got my stuff done, but my images are missing. Do I lose marks? Yes, you do. You lose marks because your images shouldn't be missing. That's a pathing issue, right? These kind of things that they have. I was 5 minutes late for my submission. Are you going to take off 20%? No, I'm not. If it's within a reasonable time frame, I'm not going to tell you how long, but if it's around the time you're supposed to submit, if it's give or take an hour, it's okay. All right. If you're 5 minutes late, I'm a human being. I'm not a computer. I'm not going to say, oh, that doesn't matter. 5 minutes, you're going to get 0. No. Or you're going to lose minus 20%. No. But if it's 7 hours late or 6 hours late or 3 hours late or something crazy or 2 hours late even, that's late. I'm sorry. That's not reasonable. I kind of give everyone a buffer of lateness, all right? Because, hey, you know what? I'm not perfect. So I'm late sometimes too. I do stuff that's late. I'm a human being, and so are you guys, right? So I kind of accommodate for that. I want to make sure you guys are okay. But if it's like 4 days late and it passed the late, that's 0. There's nothing I can do for you there unless you have a medical reason, something else that you send me your doctor's note, those kind of things. That's reasonable, right? But if it's beyond the time frame and you expect not to get docked any marks or any of those things, I got to be fair to everybody. What about the people that submitted everything on time? How come they should get the same mark as you when you submitted it like 3 days late? That's, you missed your due date. So that's where it's a little different. Okay, I'm going to stop recording here online here. I've been recording all this. I'm going to stop recording this online, and then I'll take any other questions or concerns you have. I don't have a lot of time left, but I'll do what I can. Yes.